As Chair of the Planning Board, due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis and in accordance with Unit's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the Governor's Emergency Order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing the Zoom platform for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting, dialing the following phone number, 603-236-4730, or by clicking on the website address, www.watervillevalley.org. B, we're providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of how to access the meeting using Zoom, and instructions are provided on the Town of Waterville Valley's website at www.watervillevalley.org. C, we're providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please call 603-236-4730 or email at townofwb@watervillevalley.org. D, we'll be adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at that time. All votes that are taken during the meeting shall be done by roll call vote. So we'll start with roll call attendance as in the past for all board members. If you can indicate if any other people are in the room with you. Nancy? I don't see Nancy yet. Mike?
Nancy's joining right now.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike Copel, alternate.
Bill Larson?
Bill Larson, member.
I'm going to circle back. Nancy, I think I just saw you pop in.
Hi, Nancy Knight, member. I had trouble finding the right link.
Glad you made it. Wendy Rathgaber, member. John?
John Racine, member.
Rich?
Good morning, Rich ex officio.
Bill Spence?
Bill Spence, member.
Terry?
Terry Wayne, member.
Rob? Rob Wilson? No? Alrighty. That out of the way. Let's move on to reviewing the meeting minutes from our regular meeting on November 12th. We'll start with that one. Nick, was there a reason that you sent out two versions, one with the numbering and one without?
Well, I think you're the only one where the Word doc, whoop.
Nick?
Yep, sorry. So
All right, well, hopefully.
I think you're the only one where the Word document doesn't give numbers. So I sent out the Word document and the PDF so that you would have numbered lines.
Okay. All right, so for the 12th, any comments, corrections?
I thought they were well done.
The only thing I saw was on line 50, home occupations and the number of consecutive days a room. I believe at that point we were talking about cumulative days.
Yes.
So if we could make that correction. And the only other auditing, which maybe isn't a big deal, I guess I need to remind everyone to vote, but we're doing the roll call vote. So I don't know why the votes in favor for the different motions go from 7 to 6. to 5.
Some people abstain. I think people leave and it should be recorded that someone has left, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I had noted that on the next minutes that we'll be reviewing. When someone leaves early, we should note the time. But since it is a roll call vote, I don't think anyone abstained for just approving the minutes. So
That's true.
we can just keep a close eye on that.
Got it.
Oh, and then a little thing on line 68. There, nothing further. There was nothing. And even though it feels like a capital N, nothing for what we're doing, a little n is probably sufficient.
Wendy, I don't have the notes in front of me right now, but I think if I'm thinking of the right minutes, there was a vote with regard to, I can't remember, what, moving ahead or something like that, but it was listed as 5 votes yes and 2 votes no, and I think it was 5 votes yes, 1 no, and 1 abstention.
Okay, Nick, do you have that?
Yeah, that's the motion on line 43.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can add a section for the abstention vote.
So it was 5 yes, 1 no, 1 abstain.
Yes.
Anything else for the November 12th minutes? Anyone want to make a motion?
Okay, I will vote, or at least move to accept the minutes as amended.
I'll
I'll
second.
second it.
All right. All in favor, Nancy?
Yes.
Mike, sorry, I didn't see you, Mike. Bill Larson?
What?
Yes.
Wendy, yes. John?
There he is.
Sorry, yes.
Rich?
Rich, aye?
Bill Spence?
Yes,
Terry?
Yes.
All right. So, November 12th, accepted as amended. So November 23rd for our workshop. So I guess I'm the only one who isn't seeing numbers on this. Is that what you're saying, Nick? Perhaps if you could just send them out as a PDF, just
Okay.
for consistency. And as we noted, for when people left early, that could be after 5 minutes or 5 minutes before we close. So if we could just have the time for leaving. Under the discussion, short-term rentals, the second line, got members twice. I think you can just get rid of the second members after board. And then we're missing a vote result for the motion to move the proposed short-term rental amendment to a public hearing. Public hearing. Sorry, I can't talk. Had we skipped a vote on that?
I don't believe so. I'll add that in.
Anyone else? All right, no other comments. We can do a repetition. Does anyone want to make a motion for the November 23rd minutes? Meeting minutes.
okay, I'll step up again and move that we accept the minutes as amended for the November 23rd meeting.
I will, this is Rich. I will second that motion.
All righty, all in favor, Nancy,
Yes.
Bill Larson,
Yes.
Wendy Rathgeber, yes. John,
Yeah, John Racine, yes.
Rich,
Rich, yes.
Bill Spence,
Yes?
Terry.
Yes.
All right, minutes are out of the way. So, first on our agenda this morning, we're opening up privilege of the floor. Craig Larson had requested to address the board. The floor is yours, Craig.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Yeah,
All right, very good.
Yes.
I want to thank you very much for having me on this morning. I just wanted to go over my perception of what's going to happen this winter here on the Tooling Hill Golf Course. As we all know, there is no hockey. Probably will not be any hockey or any groups of any sizes that are the conceivable future, probably for the entire winter, I guess, at this point. Our business models were based on the hockey in the group business per se, with a little bit of day trippers type thing. We're expecting a much different type of business this winter, and I just wanted to go over that a little bit. We're expecting a heavy influx of day people coming into the valley for a number of reasons that I can see. One, there are some of the mountains are not doing tubing or limiting it very heavily. Like Loon is, I think they're up in the air about actually if they're even going to do it. Historically, we would get 100 to 150 people from Loon on a normal weekend day. We're expecting probably more, and we're going to try to deal with how we can handle these influx of people. The other thing that we've noticed is that the trailheads on like 49 and 50 Notch are just inundated with people for the day coming in to use the trail system. We expect those same people are looking to do things again for the day, and thus we're going to be open for business to allow that to happen, because 99% of our business is outside, and it's actually they could, in the wintertime, we're all bundled up anyway, so the employees we do have outside are very well protected. We're also expecting less people to come inside the building. We're experiencing that as we speak. There are less people that feel safe coming into buildings in general, and I'm figuring somewhere around 25% of these people are just not going to come inside. Thus, we're bringing in some food trucks to set up a food court, which is all outside, and that will be down by the garage. I did go over that with Chris Hodge and Mark Dakota earlier in the season, also on that. The one good point about that is, as you can see, I don't know if you've been by, the garage is much cleaner and more organized down there. And I guess if I had an excuse, if I could use the property for other uses, I'll keep it cleaner, I guess. So that might help out a little bit. But we're expecting a heavy day trip type thing. Thus, we got, the parking on the street is very important to us. It's important to us that it's managed properly. We will try to manage it as best we can, which we will do on Valley Road. The signage that's out there now is good. We'd like to do it a little bit, move it closer to the clubhouse than where it is now. And I think we can do it during the winter by just plowing the area correctly. So we're kind of psyched about that. I just want to comment about the fact that there is no shuttle going on here this winter. It's going to be a huge blow to parking and traffic issues in here. I do believe that the shuttles can be run. I think it's pretty much should be a town-wide system. And most towns that I've ever dealt with, their shuttle system or senior trust business or whatever was handled by the town. It is a federally funded program. Some of these towns that do get funds for federal government for shuttle businesses. New York City is running their subway, Boston's running their subway, their buses are running in Boston, so I don't know why we can't have buses here. The other thing that's kind of going on a little bit, there was some, as you know, we did the fireworks last summer. And mainly because of that, I think the lodge owners have been asking me if I could do fireworks this winter. I'm a little hesitant about it. I don't see where it totally benefits myself, but I feel obligated to help them out a little bit, because there are, as far as we can see, there are not going to be the fireworks. Very important to the Saturday weekend business here was the fireworks display every Saturday night. I think this, by not doing them, they're going to put a heavy dent in the lodging. And as you can see, lodging is way down. And I could answer any questions regarding the tubing hill or how we're going to operate the tubing hill. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I do want to throw out one other thing to give a little heads out. As you know, last summer, we had an influx of people outside serving them on Friday, Saturday nights and whatnot. We did all food service and liquor service out on our patios and whatnot. It was kind of chaotic and it was kind of not controlled. The way it was not intended to be built, but when I built the patios out there, I was not intending it to be as busy as we saw last summer. So the whole construction of it is not set up to control people in an adequate fashion or whatever. I would like to propose, and I can come back if I need to, I would like to build a deck system out back that is more controllable with, that we can control some of the service out there in a better format. It would be easier for us to wait on them. It would be easier for us to serve them, and the experience would be a little bit better. And the fact is, we're not even in the summertime, we weren't getting people in our dining room or in the screen. It was screened-in patio, and they're still not going inside. I don't see that changing. I really don't. I really don't see that changing. Maybe for the good. But we have to react to what the people want. That's what a business does. Is we react to what they want, and we try to serve them. And our job is to serve them in a responsible manner. And so I think I will be asking for a supplementary, put a deck out back that we can control some of the business that we're experiencing out here now. I'll open that, and on that, that's really much what I have to do about the tubing. Are you going to open up comment for like what was talked about last night later, or should I go over a couple of points on that?
We'll do that later.
All right.
We'll definitely, yeah.
All right. So that's what we're doing. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, when it comes to
Wendy, I have a question for the board, I think. So I think this probably should have been on the agenda as a conceptual to give the board an opportunity to give him feedback on whether this would qualify to be a minor site plan review.
I'm not proposing anything right this second.
I'm not quite done. So, I'm hearing some activities are being added, like food trucks and fireworks that may not have been anticipated in his initial site plan review. And my understanding was that's just the kind of thing the board added this minor site plan review process for, just so that somebody can just, come in with a sketch and do one meeting with the abutters notice and amend a site plan review to let the businesses evolve and change. That's kind of what I remember hearing from the planning board of why you added this minor site plan review process.
Yeah,
The addition of activities, like I'm hearing food trucks, that probably wasn't part of the initial site plan approval, just as an example.
Yeah, I suspect there's a bit of confusion in this case specifically, since Craig's already met with Chris Hodges and Mark Dakota, as far as where those lines are drawn. I don't know, Mark, can you,
When we were talking about food trucks earlier, and I said that's usually a select board regulation, because they're usually on town property, like town parking lots or by the town green or parking spaces. If if it's an activity added to a business that would, that wasn't anticipated when they had their site plan approval, then they need to come to amend their site plan through that minor process.
Yeah, this has always been an issue, what constitutes a change in use that would trigger the minor site plan review. So I'm all for it. I think Tara's right that the board should review the changes if it was not part of the original approval by the or under the site plan that was approved. So if that's what you want to do, that's fine.
And it would be an opportunity to catch up with any other activities that were added or expanded since the last site plan approval and the anticipated deck, and then everything's in the file and it's clear that everything that's happening is allowed.
Yeah, and it makes it easier for the selectmen, right, Rich, to draw the line of enforcement between the planning board and the board of selectmen, right? It just gives you more information to
Right.
talk with Chris about.
Yeah, you're right. I do agree with that, Mark. Craig, never let a good deed go unpunished. But I very much appreciate everything you've told us. But I don't want Craig to wait for this. I mean, I think we should move this along quickly to include a special, planning board meeting if Craig were to make the application, and for us to discuss it and approve it as soon as possible, or not. Excuse me, approve and not approve as soon as possible.
Mike Aronson?
Hi, I've got a comment on this. I don't see why this is an expanded use where someone who is selling food on their property continues to sell food, whether they're selling it from one building or a portable building. I don't see any change at all to this. I don't see the need for us to be involved. I could understand if he was selling it on the street or if he was selling it on town property where food trucks would be. But because it's in his property and he's already selling food, why are we getting involved?
I suspect the biggest issue would be the parking, which we know is already, that needed to be expanded.
Parking is a separate issue, but the expanded use of food, it's like him putting the lemonade little stand he had up in the parking lot this summer for the kids to sell. Is that an expanded use? That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Sure.
We do have a food license for the entire property, all 40 acres. We have a liquor license that covers all 40 acres. I did meet with over a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, with Mark Dakota and Chris Hodge. I can understand going forward, that's why I'm here, is to give you an update on what we're doing. And I'm willing to do that twice a year or every week if you want me to. But we're operating tonight, kind of deal.
Well, and I kind of agree with where Rich is coming from. We don't want to interrupt your business flow. And it seems like, especially in this case, there was perhaps a little bit of confusion as to how best to move forward.
And the other, my experience with site plan review is not an up or down vote. It's what I do with site plan. You go in there and you tweak the plan and you get some input on it. It's not an up and down deal. It's not a zoning deal. I mean, we're allowed to have this under zoning, period. Because obviously we have food licenses. I don't mind going to site plan, either a major or whatever you want to call it. I don't mind doing it. I do it. That's why I'm here right this second, is to get some tweaking on it. If you want to tweak it a little bit, this is my opportunity to tweak it.
Yeah, I think the issue, Craig, is just that how it was presented. We don't have abutters present who are notified.
That's not my fault.
I was acknowledging that when I said that it sounds like there was some misunderstanding of how to best proceed. And I would be hesitant to do anything that would interrupt your business, but I do want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to speak, could be impacted. Let's get some other opinions from other board members who haven't yet spoken.
It just understanding was there may have been, that a lot has evolved and changed since the original site plan. Has there been any changes to lighting associated with the tubing, for example? That it would be a chance to catch up, just get all that in the final. And the minor site plan procedure, you can do it with a sketch and a list of bullet points in one meeting. It's just to.
I'm not opposed to the site.
Again, it's designed to keep you moving.
Can I make, it's Mike Capel, can I make one comment?
Of course.
And Craig, I want you to know, we love you. Columbus Day weekend, the on-street parking came all the way down to our house. So that if you're going to do something, and I agree with you that we have to address the parking issue, and I don't know whether that's a planning board issue or a select board, but clearly that is something that has to be addressed.
And I've been talking about parking now for 4 years. I've been talking about it heavily. So, you know, the whole valley has changed, totally changed in the last 6 months. Yes, on Columbus Day weekend, they were all 100% residents of this town. Why they can't walk in here, I don't know, but I can't tell them. I try to get them to walk in here. People do, it's not happening. And we're just trying to deal with it as best we can. It's totally different than what it was a year ago. And it all has to do with the residents.
I'm not blaming you.
Yeah, I'm just saying, but we're trying to control it as best we can. We're also heavily asking about it. I mean, I've been harping on it for a while now. Now I can go out there and take one of the 8th fairway and make one huge Walmart parking lot. I have no problem doing that, but I don't think that's what the town wants.
Okay. And I think that's part of, you know, a continued discussion with any changes would be appropriate. Thank you, Terry.
I'd like to ask Mark if the off-street or the on-street parking is going to be part of the engineering for the roads throughout the town that we're presently involved with the engineer on.
Not at the present time,
Why not?
because that's outside of the scope of what we have to address the paving first. And if the selectmen want to move into parking after that, that will be a separate engineering thing. Now, we did agree that the area where we are doing this temporary on-street parking, that area will be looked at and be part of the paving plan. But there was not a study for whether or not that needed to be done in other parts of town. That's just not part of what we're doing.
I've brought up parking now for 3-4 years.
Yeah, that's on the record. But you know, yes, it's all part of.
And we and the Board of Selectmen have authorized the temporary parking spot that was requested. And I know that it needs to be done elsewhere in town, but we have not engaged an engineer to do that for everywhere in town. That is just outside of the scope of what he's looking at.
If I may, Wendy, 2 quick points from the select board point of view. One, on the parking, I believe in our approval of Craig's request for the quote unquote temporary parking, or to extend the temporary parking from last winter to this winter through March. We agreed to that. And also, I think if you go back and look at the discussion, we're looking for some guidance or we were looking for, I believe, the planning board to take up the issue of parking. If I remember correctly, Mark, maybe you can refresh my memory on this, understanding that, yes, Craig is absolutely correct. We need to relook at our zoning ordinance with regard to on-street parking. This is an issue that we do need to deal with. From the planning board perspective, we've been moving on a number of things, and we just haven't, frankly, gotten to this one. The second point I want to make from a select board point of view that relates to the planning board is that Mark did inform us just before, I think, Craig, that you had the food truck. It was about a week ago or so, I believe, a little less maybe.
A month ago, I talked about it.
That long? Well, I mean, we did discuss it just briefly via email, and agreed that this is something too that we should explore too, and that I believe is going to be on the agenda for our next Board of Selectmen meeting this coming Wednesday, the 16th, I think it is, if I have the date correctly. Is to look at the food, is to look at how to regularize and permit the food truck.
They're already licensed. They're already licensed.
Right.
Yeah,
Excuse me, Rich, Mike here.
Go ahead,
I
Mike.
think in our conversation via email on food trucks, didn't talk about regulating Craig's food trucks.
No, I'm
Talked
sorry.
about with food trucks, we would have to figure out a way of how to handle people who wanted to bring
Yes.
food trucks in. And I think we were assuming that that would be on public ways, not on private properties
Okay,
with food
right.
licenses.
Right, we haven't discussed it, but what you said is what I meant. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
If I could just, we can call this good news, but the planning board already did amend the zoning to allow on-street parking.
Right, it's just a matter of identifying where it would be appropriate.
There's a whole new flexible parking section that was worked on a year or two ago, where the planning board can look at things other than off-street parking.
Right.
That's done.
So the on-street parking now going forward would fall under the purview of the select board to allow it in a case by case? Is that what you're saying, or?
Well, there's two. Someone comes in and their business parking lot can't hold all their business anymore. The planning board needs to approve a flexible parking plan that allows on-street parking, but the select board has to have allowed that on-street parking to be there. Right, so it's something you do with the select board.
Well, just because we have a lot on our plate this morning and Craig has a lot at stake, let's figure out how best to move forward to keep all the communications clear. Is there a sense in the board that we'd like to pursue? I guess my suggestion, but I definitely want board feedback on this, is that we allow Craig to continue as he'd planned to operate, but to schedule, I guess, a special meeting to be able to allow feedback from abutters so we can address any additional concerns with a minor site plan review. What are the?
I would be in favor of what you just said.
Okay. You know what, let's swing through a roll call. So Nancy, what are your thoughts? It's early there, I know it's early.
Yeah,
Is it 5:30 or something?
it is 5:34. I agree. I think we can just tackle what we can today in order to move this forward, knowing that we just need to get out the word better about the minor site plan review being ready now. Okay. Hopefully I made sense.
It did. John?
Sure, John Racine, I think we need to move forward with this as soon as possible, but I do agree with Mike Aronson in regards to all of this. So, and also the parking that the town made out front there on the road, Valley Road, is not big enough. I don't know what they were doing, but there's room for 10 more cars. I'm wondering why they did that. Anyways, that's my thoughts.
Okay. Rich, for moving forward, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm thinking on the fly here. I agree that we should move forward as quickly as possible and concur in what Craig has proposed for the time being. There seems to be, to me, it seems to be there's an issue, a confusion or a conflation maybe between what is an enforcement issue and what is something that should go for the planning board. It appears that, Craig, you've been looking at this more as an enforcement issue. And we're talking more about going through a planning board process. So I think we do need to clarify that, but if Craig is willing to go through a minor site plan review, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Bill Spence?
Yes, I think the minor site plan review idea is useful, but what we're dealing with today is, I don't see that the food truck matter is a process to deal with now. That is, I think Craig should be allowed to operate food trucks on his property to serve customers on a daily basis. Like, the food trucks are not going to be there for longer than the time when the customers are there. In other words, a day. And then talk about these other matters as quickly as we can. In other words, a special meeting to deal with the other matters that Craig has raised.
Terry?
Yeah, I think go ahead with the minor site plan review, but also might not be a bad idea to talk to the engineers. You might be able to add a little bit to the contract for that local area with regard to parking. We have a pedestrian village plan that does deal with on-street parking. And where we're going through the process now of designing the roads and the sidewalks and so forth, it might not be a bad idea to include at least that area where it appears to be a particular problem at the moment. And it might expand into dealing with the on-street parking throughout the town.
Yep.
So the, remind me of the time span for abutters notifications. Is it 5 days?
It'd be 10 days from just 10.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
I would like to, I think that's what I'm doing right now is basically a minor site plan review. And that's why I asked to be spoken to today. I have done it in the spring, I'll do it in the fall. I think it's important because unfortunately or fortunately, we're moving way faster than most businesses over here, and we are adapting to change more readily than other businesses are doing. That's been how I've made my money, is to move forward. And we're going very fast here to try to deal with the public and the changing, what they want. I would like to apply, or I will apply after January 1st, let's say, for a minor site plan review, full hearing with all the neighbors. I do try to talk to the neighbors as much as possible when I see them. And I do appreciate their input on it. And maybe we could go forward in January with a minor site plan review, mostly for the summer, but we could review what's going on here in the wintertime at the same deal. And I would be happy to set up a 6-month review every 6 months, because that's really how fast things are changing out here.
I think the important clarification is just that with a site plan review, abutters would be notified and we would have it listed appropriately on the agenda.
Correct.
So, it's a communication thing at this point.
I'm all for it. Because
Okay.
I'm just going around talking to them.
May I ask a question, Wendy?
Go ahead.
For Tara, would Craig's, and Craig, I assume I'm not sure when you're gonna do this, but would you include in that the larger patio or the patio expansion? That would be part of a minor site plan review, am I not right?
Well, what I'm proposing, whether or not, is that I have, let's say, 26 seats inside. I think what's working is that I say those 26 sites inside will be duplicated outside and not used inside, because we're not going to get these people inside. And so I would have the same 26 seats, except that 6 months of the year I would use them, 6 months I would use them outside. I need some flexibility on where those seats are.
No, I get that, Greg. I was just asking if that's a minor site plan review.
That's your call on that.
Topic.
That's your
I
call.
was asking Tara.
I'll say minor on everything.
Yeah, no, Tara?
Yeah, the regulations are specific that if it's an outdoor use area no more than 500 square feet, it can comply, it can be a minor.
Okay. So, would the board be satisfied with allowing Craig to continue on as he's been doing? And we'll look at a site plan review, and we could do at our regular January meeting, or we could do earlier. I know with the holidays, it gets a little bit convoluted.
I prefer to do the January, because if we get through the holiday, I'll have a better handle on how this winter's gonna play out. And maybe I can have a little input, or at least bring it up, even if it's not 100% on the agenda, it could be discussed a little bit of how it's going down.
Well, we'll make sure that it is 100% on the agenda.
All right.
That's, yes, our goal, to make sure everyone's on the same page.
And so Nick would need the abutters list and a sketch and kind of a bullet point list of everything maybe that's happened since the approved site plan, so that it's all in the file.
You gotta get a new filing cabinet.
So would our routine meeting give you sufficient time for that, or would you like an earlier meeting than
As
that?
long as we don't talk about engineered plans and architecture.
No, that's the whole point of the minor.
Then I'm fine, obviously fine.
And I think Nick would need everything, is it 21 days before the meeting?
You better do it now.
Yeah, I think that's right. Okay, so that's how we'll move forward. Anyone in the board not in agreement with that? Okay. All right, so Craig will keep operating as he is, and then we'll review at our January 14th meeting, our regular meeting, and do a minor site plan review at that time. Okay.
One other comment, Wendy, for Craig. I would recommend, Craig, if I don't want to, well, I am recommending, I'm subjecting you to another meeting, but we have a select board meeting next Wednesday. It may be helpful for you to make this presentation. I know Mike's on here and I'm on here, but Margaret is not, as to what you are planning to do this winter at the golf course. If you have, it would be a good thing, I think.
Right, I'm all for information.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Craig. Let's move on to our new business. Gary with a conceptual consultation for lots 105, 10.13, or sorry, 10.31 and lots 36.2 and 36.3.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. We want to follow up from our previous meeting. I think it was back in July, when we were only purchasing one lot. We're now at two, which kind of brought us into a complete different design scheme, kind of progressed over the summer and has kind of changed at this point. I don't know if you guys have the drawings I sent over in front of you, or I could possibly try to do a screen share, or okay, you guys got them. But
Sorry, let me just double check. Does everyone on the board have a copy, or do we need a screen share?
I'm all set.
A screen share would be helpful.
Yeah, I can speak there for the public too, if you just tell me which one to have up when.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll start with the 9-unit plan. That was kind of where I left off in the summer. Yep, that one. So the 9 units, you know, as it progressed, I think we came in with 4 on the first lot the last meeting. We kind of looked at it as, you know, a development project at this point. So, you know, after hearing a comment from the board member in this board, I think, I'm not sure who, but, and then after researching pretty heavily with.
Sorry, which one am I after here? I've got to catch up.
If it helps, I would do just the 9-unit site plan. Yeah, 9-unit attached plan. Yeah, right there. So kind of following the zoning code with multifamily that kind of led us towards this direction. You know, the first lot, as I mentioned, it's me, my business partner, and another business partner are going to take some units. Second lot, is being purchased for development. I think sellers were a little nervous if the second lot anybody would buy it if there was a multifamily on the first one. So we kind of headed in this direction. My original plan, you might remember, did not have parking, any garages, but after hearing a comment and then doing some pretty good research, it is pretty necessary in the valley for resale purposes. So this scheme does meet the lot coverage, open space, stuff like that. But there's a couple of restraints that I started to feel a little bit uncomfortable about, which is just push the units up a floor. Because where the driveway was pre-approved, it's on the high side of the lot, which in townhouses is difficult because you can't have just a drive under garage. You have to have it on the high side, which means your living spaces go up from there. And there's a pretty good drop from the driveway down to Valley Road, which puts these houses at, in the rear, potentially 4 stories. And it just kind of got, I've heard some comments early on that, just the concerns about neighbors, it's a pretty drastic difference between what's in the rest of the association and the neighborhood versus what we have. And if you want to pull up the rendering, you could show, I did a little rendering showing what it would look like from the driveway side. That would be the 9-unit attached rendering. But the concern would be on the rear side of the lot, there actually would be another floor because the basement drops down. So if I had to have garages on the north side of the lot, because they're townhouses, there's only windows on the front and back, so you really can't have just 2 stories. And on the rear side of the lot, it creates a pretty high structure and, a view kind of wall to the neighbors. So we got to a point where we were almost ready to submit, and we've had success on, separating small cluster developments like low pocket neighborhoods past. So I took a stab at laying out something separated as cottages. I ran the numbers, kind of like compare and contrasted construction versus resale. And if you want to go to the 6-unit detached plan, this is kind of what we came up with, where the numbers in terms of profit margins to the bank and feasibility, 6 was the lowest number of units that I could get to match the same, I guess, financial structure as the other one. And we've done a project very similar to this. I actually live in it right now in Newburyport. That was very successful. The boards are happy, the neighbors are happy, really nice. So this is kind of what we started to look at is, to get this structure, there's a couple different avenues to get this layout. Is we would probably have to shift the lot lines a little bit to kind of separate them. The sewer easement would get moved, but I think that was kind of that's been the plan all along, to move the sewer easement a little bit down. And then there's a potential, so I don't need it, but I did propose it, is there's a few variances on just the lot line in between the 2 lots. One of the neighbors, they wanted some separation. So the only way to get that would be between lot, the 3rd unit and the 4th unit to get side setback variances. So part of the discussion today, and actually if you want to pull up the renderings, I did one from the driveway and one from the rear on this one.
Sure. Can I just ask, Ben, did you not receive my comment?
I don't think so. No.
I've sent you 2 steps now to explain where each of these would need to be changes made to comply with the zoning.
Okay.
The variance is not going to be an option, and I explained why. But before you go further with this option, the zoning would only allow 2 single-family homes, 1 for each lot. Even if you combine it as a PUD, density is not something that the board can flex under a PUD.
Okay.
So
does it say in the PUD about the 2? Because I read through the PUD, I didn't see anything about the density.
So it lists the things that they can waive, but density isn't one of them. So so the most a PUD can get you would be if there was a better arrangement for you to have to combine the lots and have the 2 single-family homes together and leave some open space and parking.
Okay, so,
Similarly, with the multifamily, you could have two multifamily buildings.
yeah,
And one of the things I explained in my comments, and I'm not sure why you're not getting those emails, is you had asked earlier, and I responded, you can't have the parking in front of the garage. It's gotta be a space exclusively for parking.
yeah, okay,
And you mentioned 4 stories, you know that the height limit is, what you've seen that the height limit is 45 feet for multi.
yeah. So I guess respond to all those, the density. So I read that whatever the base zone is, obviously if I'm in, I can't increase the density, but where a multifamily is allowed, I mean, I have a density of 4 on the other one. So the density of number of units, that's where I got to the 3, because I wouldn't be increasing the density of what is allowed by zoning, so that's where I kind of read that one.
It's gonna be two principal buildings.
2 principal.
Whether they're single family or duplexes or multifamily.
Okay. So there is allowed 2 principal buildings in the zone, or is that just the?
No, because you could, I'm saying that because you have 2 lots, that's.
Yeah.
The best of things we get to is putting them closer together. It doesn't get you more principal buildings.
Okay. Okay, I totally read that differently, because I mean, if I had one acre lot, which is the plan unit development requirement, I mean, technically, you know what I mean? If I'm allowed, the plan unit, I read it as it's allowed, you can have a multifamily use, where if you have 1 lot, you do have 1 building, either multifamily, which you could have however many you could split, but then the plan unit development would allow you to have more flexibility of separating that, but you can't add the density of the number of units, because I mean, I guess you got to think about, if you have 1 lot and you're only allowed 1 unit, what would be the point of the planned unit? I guess that's where I guess I would go with.
Yeah.
And I
allow people to cluster buildings closer together and leave more open space and
yeah, but the thing is, if you only have 1 lot, which is what the plan unit development says, it says you just need a lot with 1 acre. If you can only do the same number of buildings as you can do by right, there would be no point of the plan unit development.
No, there's no density bonus. It's just about being able to be more flexible, and creative in the siting. There's no density bonus.
Is anybody else following me where I'm going with this?
I hear what you're saying, but this is all rather painfully clear to us, because last year we had a vote in the town, and for a single family home, the town wanted to keep a minimum lot size in BC.
Yeah.
So this plan, even though I hear what you're saying about density, it would violate the minimum lot size for a single family home.
Okay.
We also updated the PUD section very recently, and it's pretty clear what the intent was.
So I guess if I'm allowed multifamily by right, I guess if I do have 2 lots here, but essentially if I did have 1 lot, I guess what is the benefit of the PUD? Whereas if I had 1 acre, I could just put A&R lot split. If I meet the minimum lot sizes, I don't need the PUD. I would do an A&R lot split at 2 lots and go in for by right 2 units. So the PUD, as it's written, and I do have an attorney consulting, it's written as, you can't increase. So if your lot says in the district you can only do a duplex, then you can't increase the number of units. But if you have, if you're able to do 4 units, you can still do 4 units, but you have to ability of kind of like the arrangement and separating. Because I guess that's my argument is if you can never have less than a minimum lot size, why would you go through the process of the PUD when you could just do an A&R lot split and get 2 lots by right? You know what I mean?
And so the reason I encourage you to chat with the board about your PUD concept was because this parking isn't legal yet. You can't double up like this. But But I wondered, and I also would question whether this is part of a principal building or really a third principal building. But I wondered if you combine the lots for a PUD if it would help you address the parking.
But so those as drawn, those parking lots, I mean, in the first, I don't know if you remember, the first one I did have all the way across. So those units are, 19 feet across. So I could definitely get 2 spots in front of each unit. And the garage would be supplementary. So that would not be part of the parking, I guess, requirement at that point.
Yeah.
So it would probably go back to what I originally designed, where parking's in front, and there's a garage space in there. And this is a configuration that, although I think I can get to work, I've spoken to the whole neighborhood, and, my attorney he disagrees with, because I guess I can't figure out if if you have to meet minimum lot size, why would you do a PUD? I guess.
So I was trying to explain that.
Okay.
I wrote it, and I know
Okay.
what the board's intent was. So I encourage you to bounce the idea of a PUD off the board, because it would give you a little bit more choices about the parking, because with the fire chief's approval, you could reduce this setback.
Yeah.
If you're doing the site, it's a little bit contrived, right? To have a multifamily on each and meet the setbacks on the parking. Whereas if you're putting 2 multifamily buildings on one, it might give you more, it might let you do a better site design for how you lay out the parking and setbacks. Because this setback could be smaller. For
the
example.
PUD.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
So I wanted you to get that feedback from the board and see what they have, see whether they felt it would meet the objectives of the PUD section or not.
Okay.
That's their call.
Yeah, just talking to the neighbors and kind of like looking at the site, the other avenue is where, I do have a plan that shows them attached. Basically, it would be the same plan. It's just they're attached through, they would have either a room or a connector piece through each unit. It's just this with outside windows. It's very tall. I'm in a very unique area of town where I think we're the only area in town that we see directly abuts low density, which is, to me, very, I know how it happened because I think up above us was multi-use, and after the single families got built, everybody changed their use to single family. It's a unique situation where I'm caught between, the Golden Eagle in downtown across the street, and I have really nice single family homes above us. So yeah, that's kind of where.
What was the height again, you think, if you included the garage?
So the problem is what do you guys measure average grade to average roof height or peak height in your zoning code?
Height, right?
I believe it's peak height.
Okay. So even then, is it from average grade?
Sorry, I can't find that. I didn't think so, but I have, just keep going on.
Okay, because it makes a difference because average grade, it would probably still be under 35 feet. But, with average grade, I have a grade change. So, this, is like, 9 foot floor to floor is like 27 feet, a peak. So it might be, I've built 4 on actually parking underneath and then 3 stories above under 35 feet. So I would assume it'd be around 35 feet, and I would have to get it into that category. But basically the basement is going to be infill, because if the garage is up top, there's really not, I doubt we would have another basement. It would probably be a slab raised a little bit. There's just a grade change, and the garage is on the high side. The townhouses create where you only get windows on the front and back. So you're kind of stuck with vertical, where the single families, they're the detached cottages, where, in my opinion, I'm not increasing density at all. As to units, I guess there's no clarification on density of buildings or units. I think that is a gray area. I would 100% interpret it as, because there's only one building, it makes more sense that you can't increase density would be related to the number of units. But the separating a little bit would allow for much less impactful buildings on the neighbors, because at this point, the ones we got are, from the driveway side, they're 1.5 stories. So you'd have your garage and you'd have a second story with some dormers, but they're 1.5. And then your basement could be actually usable space into the ground. So they're probably about 10 feet less of an impact. And with this, the separations, they kind of gave view vistas between the buildings and a little bit of sun coming through. And it just falls under, falls in line a little bit with more, I read your zoning district that says it's trying to create the village atmosphere. For me, I live in Newburyport, which is kind of a village architecture town. A small little neighborhood of different little cottages has a better village feel than the, condo buildings.
And I hear what you're saying on that, Ben, but it was a similar proposal that got the town really up in arms to say,
Okay.
no, we want a minimum lot size. So that's why we're a little bit.
Yeah.
We actually,
minimum lot size per unit though, because I read through that probably 10 times, and I'm going to tell you, the intention might have been there, but interpretation of actual language, it says, it says that the density, yeah.
Well, that's why it's good to do the conceptual, just so we can.
Okay.
Let me get back to you on the height.
Okay.
What it says is the maximum building height from the highest point on the basin line, it should be 45 feet for multifamily.
Okay, so I'm well below that. It's just from the street, I just don't think it's a better project for the town. And actually, that's part of the reason why I started with a local zoning attorney who said, basically planned unit developments are a little bit toxic in this town, to try to stay away from that word. He kind of suggested the variance because it's a simple variance. You have hardships. This is one of the most, I've never in my career seen a road that cuts through a lot as an easement, which really limits. And then I actually got the same feedback from them. They all liked the cottages, but they said that the planned unit developments have a little bit of, if you use that word, it's going to be a little bit tougher. And that's the only reason why we suggested the variance, because, there is a possible hardship argument just based on, the town zoning, the way it's written. It's not typical to have $1 million single family homes butting right up against a high density district.
That was created because of the owners there. So
Yeah, exactly. It's not created by you guys. It was kind of
When we're done, I'll forward you the 2 sets of comment. I'll forward them to Nick to forward you, because you seem not to be getting my emails, but I'll explain why a variance isn't going to be an option for you.
Tara, can I ask a question here? Tara, when you look at these 2 lots, the way we're looking at it now, if PUD incorporated both those lots, what about the situation where you would have 4 duplexes? Because you can vary the setbacks between the 2 lots.
Well, he can have 2 principal buildings. If he combines these, he can have 2 buildings, whether they're single family duplexes or multifamily.
Even in a PUD, you can't sacrifice that?
Right. Because
I guess I come back to
the PUD language is clear what you can permit exceptions to, and it's internal setbacks, street setbacks, open space, and building proximity. That's all you're allowed to vary in a PUD.
Okay.
Could you subdivide those lots, make it 4 lots? Because it's no minimum lot size.
No, they're the minimum lot size now for 1 principal building each.
So I guess my only argument, again, to the whole density thing doesn't quite make sense, is how would you have the leeway to have spacing between buildings be changed if you can only have 1 building? Do you know what I mean? Because if you combine the lots, you can have 2 buildings, and you could put 2 buildings over here and the parking over here, or open space. Yeah, I guess it's just, but there's, I'm trying to explain. So basically, but if you have 2 A&R lots, it's a big process to go through to, where it says if you go through a PUD, you can get your buildings closer, but I would.
It's designed to have flexibility in the site layout, not let you have a more intensive project. And And one reason you see an inconsistency between the requirements for single family and duplex and multifamily is because an amendment that the board proposed to make those consistent failed.
We tried to be on the same page is what.
Yeah.
But it was cut down quite vehemently.
I mean, I would just say I have a zoning attorney, and then actually I have a permitting representative who's actually the planning director of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and he read that zoning ordinance, interpreted it as, you know, you can't intensify the use, which is number of units, but so it may just be, you know, if that's what you guys were intending, it's just not quite clear to. You know,
no, and often when a planning board proposes a zoning amendment, it's often to try to make something more clear. So it's kind of sad when the community votes it down and leaves it.
Okay. Okay. I mean, so I guess I left. I mean, tough because there's an argument. I guess it's just tough because I know the neighborhood, you know, would rather see, you know, the less intense, you know, density. And, you know, I would say 3 units, arguably in court, 3 units, whether they're attached or detached, is less intensive than 4 or 5 attached. I mean, and that's where I guess.
Then the neighborhood led the charge to defeat zoning amendment to allow more density.
And we
but
did
again,
actually,
so
we did
is it
receive,
more? The argument is it more dense or less dense?
Yeah, I understand. I hear you.
We did receive some communication from one abutter who had indicated that this plan that we're seeing would be preferable.
Okay, one abutter said that, the townhouses?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just curious, what size?
Are the townhouses?
What size townhouses are you talking about?
We're trying to get it up, you know, it's all what we can, but I mean, it's probably trying to get 1,700 or so per townhouse. We're trying to get there. I mean, realistically, the single families are just, you know, much more desirable. Like I do have a scheme that basically we would have almost like garages in between, kind of like attaching cottages. And I have a feeling that would be the route we're most likely going to go. Just knowing desirability and, you know, impact on the street. You know, it's
So that's a question for the board meeting, is whether that. So a few questions for the board while you have them. Would that be seen as a multifamily, as one multifamily unit, or would that be seen as multiple units, right? Another question is whether they see this single family dwelling attached to the multi as still being one principal building. And then the third question how does the board feel about the idea of this as if looking at it as 2 buildings on one lot let you do a better job on the site design? That's I see 3 questions for the board here.
So with what you were just talking about, John, with attaching the individual cottages with a garage in between. Would you mind flipping to that, Tara?
There's no door.
No, but just
I have it on my other computer, but I mean, it's done a lot. I mean, that's a a lot of towns, that's pretty prominent. You know, almost every town, people are doing the houses attached by garages, you know, and their own decisions. Like Newburyport had that happening everywhere, and they wanted it to look more historic and old. So they actually made an ordinance on exactly what a multifamily has to be. And there's a million rules now, you know, like the middle walls have to be 50% of the length of the walls have to be touching, what type of living spaces. But in my experience, I mean, I've built a lot of duplexes that have garages in between. And I just think, so I do have a plan. I'll send it to you guys. That it's pretty nice. I mean, they're little cottages. I would reverse them so they'd all have like front porches facing the street. Because I mean, my biggest goal is I don't want to drive down Valley Road for the rest of my life and see something that I think is bad for the town. I just don't. Although this is probably pretty profitable, it's, you know, if it was a flat lot, I'd be highly more considering, you know, actually doing it. that's the reason why my first proposal did not have garages. It was just lower on the lot and it was better looking, less intensive. So I guess I would probably convert, I do think it would help a little bit as long as it's not, because I just went through an open space residential development in Newburyport and it was 3 years. So there's obviously although I do think taking out that center lot line and allowing a little bit closer together would be much better for the project because we can kind of align it a little bit better with Valley Road. That would be one of my goals if we did do the townhouses, is try to see if we could, tweak them to be kind of more in line. So as you're going down Valley Road, they're not this weird kind of cut off direction. But I guess the process of the PUD, is it, I do have a closing date. Is it, a long time consuming, or, if it's comparable where I come in and it's kind of predetermined, a little bit like a minor, then I think that could be an avenue that I think would help the project. But
it's not going to be a minor, but if you got feedback from the board today that they feel it would meet the objectives of the PUD section, then it wouldn't add any time.
Yeah. Okay. So it wouldn't add any time if I kind of got, so ideally I have a plan. It is a lower version. It's a 1 story with a porch. It's actually the front of a house that I built before, and I would reverse it so that the porches with roof overhangs would all face the street, and then there'd be a single door in the back, and they'd probably be separated just by a garage. I guess, and I guess that would take it from 9 to, I think we'd try to get 4 on each. So it'd go to 8 if they're attached, because there's an extra cost of it. Whenever you now have $10,000, $20,000 per unit for sprinklers. So it has to intensify the use. Otherwise, financially it doesn't make sense, which is another added benefit to separating the units, because you can decrease the density, but because you're saving almost the cost of a lot per unit by not just having to do sprinklers and separating them. So yeah, I mean, if there is no avenue, I mean, to me, it's an interpretation, and I would interpret that language to be different than you guys are interpreting. I know you guys got fought, but so I guess then that might lead to, that is the direction where I would kind of make them feel a little bit more like single families, but they are going to be multifamilies. And I think instead of 6, they would be skinnier. So the plan I have, I think, is 20 feet wide, and they're nice little cottages with porches, and we probably attach them with a garage, or even, it could be storage, between the units. It could be, larger off the mudroom. You have a whole room for ski equipment and stuff like that, which is.
I'm just having a hard time visualizing what you're talking about now. So you're saying it would be similar density to the townhouses, and that'd be the 4.
So it'd be a little wider, because if you look at the 4, I'd have, garages in between. So it'd be a little bit wider, which is why I think the PUD might help with the lot line thing, getting them a little bit less than 40 feet separated from each other. But that would be the alternative. I mean, I started with this, but then, it's kind of like when you do a plan, sometimes you now start talking to people and get feedback and realize this is, it's a big process there's a lot of negatives.
All right, can I suggest that we get some other board members' feedback on what you're talking about? Anyone want to chime in with some questions?
Yeah, I would. I've in order to provide some feedback, I have to go back and reread the regulations. And I'm struggling with doing that in the midst of a meeting.
Okay.
This is Rich, if I may speak. Regard to townhouses, or what we call, I think, multifamily dwelling. I think it's silent on what the internals are to the building. I think it just talks about 3. The definition just talks about 3. I'm looking at it now.
Well, it says they can contain townhouses, row houses,
right,
apartments. So
designed for use by 3 or more families. So it doesn't say what the attached room, quote unquote, has to be.
trying to pull up, I don't know what page the plan development is on, but.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing
Sorry.
you.
I said, yeah, I'm on it right now, but, I was trying to see if I could pull up the plan unit development, but, yeah, I mean, yeah, so I mean, I guess that's either way. I mean, I wouldn't mind if everybody, could review that language, because I had it reviewed and they interpreted it as 3 units would be less intense of a use than 5.
But it doesn't say that anywhere. It says the planning board may permit exceptions with respect to internal setbacks, street setbacks, open space, and building proximity.
Yeah. But what
I
did it say about, I don't have it in front of me, I've read it. You know what page it's on?
31.
30.
Oh, 32?
My 32, I don't know.
Uh-oh.
Okay, so, I had the same thing.
The town voted down allowing more density when it's single family homes.
Yeah. Did anybody establish density? Because like the one we have down here, we just did is you have to show a yield plan first to establish density. So basically we have the same thing where you can kind of compact it, but you have to dedicate your open space. It's called an open space
Yeah, I
residential.
understand. I've written this for a number of communities over the
Yeah.
years, but
So that's how we establish, and actually,
but that's not how this one works.
okay. I mean, just one example across the street,
Principal buildings, you can combine them. You can combine the lots to have them closer and use the site.
Okay. We went through this exact kind of thing down here where you have to do a yield plan, but they have a special permit for a duplex on the lot. And the question is, can you establish number of units by a special permit, because you're not guaranteed to get it. And the board down here granted that. We did a yield plan of lots to establish number of lots, and we showed that we could do duplexes on every lot, and it was voted that is the density, and we were able to separate the single families.
But that's not where you're applying, and I really think your time would be better used to find, how the board feels about using their PUD provisions.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that would be. I mean, it'll be a redesign. I mean, does that sound worthwhile? I mean, I guess, yeah, I would probably have to, go to, 2 buildings with 4 units each. They would be, I do think the cottage look is the best here because it's going to be the less intense on the street. And I guess I would connect them through some sort of structure, it would either be, an expanded mudroom for ski storage, stuff like that, or it would be a garage, and to connect them to be a multifamily. And then I guess the interior lot line would either be removed, I mean, or there would be reductions. Now on your POD, can I have multiple lots within the POD?
Yes.
What do you say?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I guess I would keep the lot line, I guess. That would be my, and I would just reduce the setbacks against that lot line to get those 4, and I guess I'd have to talk to my business partners and everybody of, what they would use more. Because if you might have noticed, the ones we're keeping, we didn't need garages because I'm a skier and, storage is more important than parking in a garage. So I guess I just talk to my business partners of, should we connect them through garages or storage units? But I do have that scheme kind of designed. So, I mean, I could get that over pretty quick. I mean, I don't know if, it'd be worth a glance if we're going to go, but I do have that.
But maybe Wendy, it'd be helpful if you pulled the board on whether that kind of thing would meet the intent of the PUD provisions, and so that he knows whether to go forward with that plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't we just go down through alphabetically? Nancy, what are your thoughts?
I actually, when can we hear from the public on this, Tara?
When he files an actual application, he gets to come as many times for a conceptual first, so that he's sure that when he's putting engineering money in, it's something the board's on board with.
Okay, so before that, there's no public input at all?
No. Because it's not, because we're not talking about a zoning amendment. It doesn't really matter what I don't want to offend anybody in my client. It doesn't really matter what the public feels about what he's doing. If it meets the regulations, it meets the regulations. And the board needs to make that call of whether you feel it meets the intent of your PUD section. And it really can't be based on, the neighbors voting. It's not, when they come to a public hearing, it's not to tell you whether they like the thing or prefer the thing, but for you to hear something that might make you realize it could do a better job complying with the regulations.
My thought was I was just reading Jenny's comment and thinking, gee, maybe by seeing the townhouse versus cottages, maybe the neighbors wouldn't vote down if we tried to get past sorry, I'm not that articulate. This is early in the morning. I apologize. But tried to get past what we didn't get past the last time.
I reached out to the neighborhood association and sent this to everybody already, and I'm surprised somebody said anything. I heard there was one guy debating it, but I got contacted, so I sent everything over to the association around us, and I got probably 5 or 6 phone calls, including the person directly behind me, the guy who just bought the lot directly to the right, and the head of the association. I got nothing but the cottages were a better route, but I did hear that one guy was debating that he liked the buffer, but everybody else was completely on the other side.
We're going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My rabbit hole.
Rejected.
Yeah.
The board would be in an awkward position to put
Okay.
forward a rezoning it to respond to an applicant.
Right, and my response is, under our current rules, you gotta follow them. And it sounds like attaching the cottages makes the most sense, because they are a lot more charming. I'd love to see that drawing, if you can come in.
I got something for you guys.
But
This is
Nancy,
done.
Nancy, the key question that he needs to leave with the answer to today is whether you'd entertain this as a PUD, so that he could have more flexibility with this, some things like this internal lot line.
And the answer is yes, if he wanted to do that, as long as it's within our rules, of course.
There's a little bit of, and the reason to ask is it's whether something meets the intent of the PUD is a judgment call by the planning board. That's why he needs this meeting and that feedback.
What are the criteria? I mean, if he didn't do anything differently than this, there's really no reason to get a PUD. But if he wanted to move things around, I mean, what is the criteria that we need to hold him to in order for us to say, of course, this should be a PUD? Because he does have a lot of restrictions on this land, so it seems like it would make sense.
Are there more restrictions on this land than on the adjacent land?
Oh yeah. So we have the multi-use trail at the bottom that's cut through. Golden Heights Road actually cuts right through our lot. So we lose actually right now I just got contacted from the neighbor to the right, because we own 20 feet of his front yard all the way up, and I have to give it to him in an easement, all of that whole side. So we took a half-acre lot, and it shrunk down to
Right.
1,600 square feet.
But it is village commercial, so you are able to even consider a multi-family. Otherwise, if it was LDR, you could just build one house.
Yeah.
Why don't we Drew as
So
far
I
as
do have if you guys want to see, this is a initial scheme that I did a while ago. They're not connected yet, but I would probably connect. So this would be, this would be as you drive it down Valley Road. I have front porches, cottages, connected in the middle. The again, you'll see they're a lot lower. They're kind of so they're like a 1-story house. That's kind of tough to see, but
Okay,
that was the alternate that I was working on, before we go to the cottages.
okay. So are you interested in the board's feedback as to whether you should pursue a PUD?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, so why don't you let us continue
Okay.
the roll
All
call?
right.
It's okay. Mike, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I absolutely think that you should pursue it. I mean, and you're right, if you take away, Golden Heights Road and your easements and everything else, you're on, 36-3, you're almost down to, 17,000 square feet instead of the 22. So you've got a lot of restrictions there.
Bill Larson, do you have any thoughts?
My thoughts remain the same. I need to read the regulations. We're spouting a bunch of stuff here, and I would personally feel better if I could reread the regulations. I see no reason why he could not apply as a PUD.
Okay. John, what are your thoughts?
Sure. So I'm leaning towards yes, but I'd like to see the new design. If I could, I don't know if that's possible, but those are my thoughts.
Rich?
Yeah, based upon what Ben has said and my understanding of the zoning ordinance, I believe PUD would meet the intent of the ordinance. So I would say yes.
Bill Spence? Are you still with us, Bill Spence?
Bill, fall asleep?
No, okay, I'm unmuted. I say yes to the PUD as the option. And that is principally because, first, I think that Ben should read Tara's assessment of the first two plans. And I think she did a very good job of the analysis, which would mean that, the first two plans that we have seen would not meet the regulations. So a PUD option with variations, including the cottage look, would be much to his advantage as a proposal.
Thank you. And Terry?
Yeah, I can see where there are some limitations, whether they're enough to qualify as a PUD on the one lot, so that you would combine the two to help that one out. It's a reasonable request. I can't say for sure that I would say it would be good, but I guess I'm probably leaning towards saying it might be authorized.
Okay. Yeah, and I feel like the consensus is pretty much yes, that the PUD sounds like an appropriate way forward. But definitely, we do need to figure out where the communication breakdown happens.
Yeah, I'll go back and check. I'm not sure.
But because Tara's feedback is always really valuable.
Wendy, if I may make one more comment.
Okay.
We're not excluding, we're not saying that his original concept is rejected by it. We're just saying he could pursue this alternate route, but not the original, not the change that he had proposed after talking to neighbors and so forth.
Right, not the cottages.
Right.
Yeah.
So either one, the board is saying they would seem to be okay to move forward conceptually.
Well,
Yeah.
Rick, the parking doesn't meet the zoning on this one.
Okay.
You said
That I could fix.
Rises. And one question I had for the board on this one is, here's a multifamily and here's a single family. To me,
Yeah,
that's two
right.
principal buildings contrived at attached, as opposed to a multifamily. And I wanted to see what the board thought about that.
Yeah, it's an important point, especially if you're going to come back to us with cottages that are attached. I don't think that type of document shows that they're attached.
Yeah, so it'll be a little bit bigger than that. I just got to figure out, what we're attaching with. I mean, there's no, again, the what I just showed you is very similar to my original proposal. They were just attached. I just don't think the look is as good, because I'm not really gaining much resale, but there is extra control. Now we'll have to have 2 walls of siding on the inside of the houses plus the storage. I mean, if I had to attach them, I guess you could. I just think the breaks of views for the neighbors above and
Don't even go down that road.
yeah. So but I think that's probably where we'll head. I'll just redesign it. I'll take the parking into consideration for sure. Can't be tandem. And I guess the only thing I would try to get in the PUD would be the center reduction, the setback in the center. And I'll try to adhere to, everything else.
Okay, and yeah, I guess if you can forward Tara's previous comments and then make sure that Tara's email is really legible in there, so then you can add it to your contacts. So
yeah, I might be getting put in a folder or something. I don't know.
Right, I have a note to send Nick both of them, so he'll have them handy to forward on to Ben.
Okay, great. And so Ben, would you plan at this point to come back at our January meeting?
Yeah. So I guess I would try to see if the engineers can make the engineering done by then. I mean, I know I could get the architecture done by then. I guess the question is, do you guys want a version sent or just come in January before that? Because the architecture wise, I could probably get done by tomorrow if I had, if I actually sat down.
Are you talking about conceptual or like?
Yeah, just a conceptual, just because someone mentioned they'd like to see it. So I could send that along and then, yeah.
Yeah, as you did with these, the more far
Okay.
ahead of the meeting you could send them, the better. So
Yeah.
you have advance time to review.
Okay.
Any more detail, you'd need to do an actual application and a.
Yeah.
butter.
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of the only reason why I came in this is that the engineers are delayed. So I figure I might as well, I want to get direction too. So now I kind of have some direction. Next would be just getting the application done.
Are you going to formally apply in January? Is that what I heard?
If they can make it, or
If they can make it.
yeah, it's all the engineers right now. Everybody's so busy, it's crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if there's any more detail, then you'd need to do an application for at least design review, and Nick would need that 3 weeks before the meeting.
Yeah.
So pretty tight.
Yeah, so it may be just a quick, if they can't make the meeting, then maybe I come back just to show you guys like this detail for what we're gonna submit, I guess, the following meeting. So hopefully that we can get the kinks out if needed.
That sounds like a good approach to me.
Okay. Sounds good.
Great. Well, thank you, Ben. We appreciate
Perfect. All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Alrighty.
You gotta see the people trying to cross country ski across the street from me in the wind.
Oh. All right. So how's everyone feeling? Do we need a 5-minute break? I know Zoom fatigue is real because we're going to jump back into what we were talking about last night. Why don't we do that? Let's take 5 minutes away from your screen. Don't go too far so you can hear us, but get some non-screen time for 5 minutes, okay?
You got it.
Okay. And maybe mute yourself so we don't hear you complaining in the background.
No, we're taking a break. I'm back.
Alrighty, everyone, can we start filtering back?
I'm here.
Excellent.
I'm here.
Awesome.
Is this now the fun begins? Are we having fun yet?
This is the best time. It's deja vu.
If we keep doing this, I'm gonna have to buy a Zoom suit.
You should have seen the people out on the 8th fairway across from me trying to cross-cut the ski in this wind. They actually got blown over.
Wow. All right, so some feedback last night from our little proposals. Tara, I really liked that chart that you did with the color coding.
Yeah.
I think that was, I felt like it was helpful. Why don't we go back to that chart and let's look at details if you don't mind.
And I just have two comments.
Yeah.
After listening last night. One is kind of a response of, you didn't force it like you enforce any land use control. You know, there's a lot of talk about enforcement, but you enforce it the same way you do any zoning. There's gonna be some people that do things without getting a permit first. That's always, but it's no different than any land use control. And the one thought I had, is going forward, I think we should divide this into some separate amendments. Because we heard some people wail on one side, but really thinking about one particular piece. And we heard some people wail on the other side, but really thinking about a particular piece. So I think,
Yes.
I think we're not gonna be done today, I'm sorry to say, but I think whatever you just, that have the content, I'm gonna need to rework it and rethink it a little bit and present it to you as some separate amendments at another meeting. So that people can pick and choose what parts of this they like. That'd be my recommendation, that you break it down a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think that makes sense.
This is gonna
Can
take.
we, wait, does that, so that means we resolve everything at the January meeting? Does that give us enough time to have this discussed at the March town meeting?
We'll be all right. We'll talk about the timing in a bit when you're ready.
I like your confidence, Tara. Thank you.
I like your confidence too.
March meeting.
You know, I've been doing this 35 years. These aren't the things that worry me.
God, you don't look that old. Maybe it's because I'm old.
Did I give that away? All right, are you looking at the chart?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
You wanna see it? Tell me how to zoom it for you best.
No, it's fine.
Pieces or all of it?
That looks
It's
good.
fine.
That's fine.
All right.
What were you talking about, Tara, when you said you heard people in two different camps?
Very upset about rooms being rented in the LDR,
Yes.
and very upset about any restriction of short-term rentals. And I thought it might make sense to break those into different amendments and.
Okay, I agree with that. There was one group of people, or at least one person, who came very well prepared. What was her name? Leonard, who argued against rental in LDR, short-term rental, not transient rental in LDR. You know, I thought that her presentation was good. And then the other group of people were those who were in HDR, and the other two would be C and C1. But in HDR, who were upset because of the proposed constraints on their ability to rent their condo.
Yeah.
Because most of them who have these condominiums are, they're not permanent residents, but part-time residents. And they thought that the restrictions that the board was proposing, or that what was presented here, was arbitrary and infringing on their ability to rent their property.
And I wasn't really sure that they totally understood that there'd be no restrictions except in the LDR.
Yeah, I think it was a perceived restriction that 90 days threw them a little bit, that if they rent for more than 90 days, they just need to get the permitting done. Whereas it was less than 90 days, they didn't.
Yeah.
And we need to clarify that.
There were certainly people arguing that they didn't feel they should have to do any permitting, but.
Right.
I think there were some people that didn't understand that you were only restricting that in the LDR. But what you're trying to do is make what they're doing already legal.
I think we have to go back 6 or 7 months when we first started this, or I first started this. And one of the things that I initially did is I sued about half of the condominium associations. And the condominium associations, interestingly enough, we all know what High Country did, but several other condominium associations tried to put restrictions on as part of their condominium association rules and were fought by people that wanted to do short-term, meaning weekend rentals. And that is, as we know, that is pervasive. And people that think that these people are not a problem, it is a problem. You know, there are lots of people. The people up at North Face have problems all the time. Same thing with New Peak. I don't know what we do about it, but that's how this started.
Yeah, I think with,
Condominium associations are not being successful in, other than North Face, other than High Country, in putting restrictions on themselves.
well, I think also to the condo associations.
It does. It
But
does.
I also feel, feel like it would be helpful for us to have this permitting process in place so that they, as well as the rest of the town, would have recourse if there's an owner who's abusive and isn't following the, the letter.
Wendy, I agree with you 1,000%. I always would anyway, but.
So why don't we start picking through, just take it as we did before, a segment at a time. Where are we at after the discussion last night? 1 or 2 rooms in an owner-occupied resident that's non-transient. Is there anyone who has an issue with that? This is not short-term. This is if someone wants to rent 1 or 2 rooms for someone seasonal, that type of thing. Anyone on the board have an issue with that one? Okay. So that's something we can definitely put forward as a way that's clearing up the non-transient. So then the 1 or 2 rooms in owner occupied that is transient.
I'd like to say something on that.
Yes.
After the meeting last night, I'm even more convinced that this does not belong in LDR. You have transient and you have tenant occupiers, and there's a big difference between the way these people act, not in a bad way necessarily, but they have different agendas. Where long-term residents, tenants, would have a tendency more to settle down, maybe meet the neighbors, and become really a part of the neighborhood in some cases. Transients might be there for just a wedding. The wedding ends at 10 o'clock. They say, come on over, I got a great place up here on the hill. We'll just pitch the party up there.
Owner occupied still.
Doesn't make any difference.
Okay.
It's a different clientele. The LDR should be a place of sanctuary for people who want to be in a residential neighborhood. There's plenty of other places in town. If you want to include the HDR, I have no problem with that. But I think that the LDR should be kept as a residential neighborhood, and any transient type of rental like that, it changes the nature of that neighborhood.
Okay. Thank you.
I support that argument, and particularly after listening to the comments of last night. I think that I'm with Terry. Restrict it in LDR.
But not an HDR, just.
Correct.
Okay. Let's keep on going through.
Well, do you want me to,
Go ahead.
you wanna have the rest of the board weigh in on that change and then I can make note of it? or-
Yeah, I just want to run through everyone and see. Nancy?
We're just talking about row 1, non-transient.
No, row 2.
Go to.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Now we can say the yellow one, now that I've color coded.
Yes,
That's right.
yellow one.
I agree. I think this is fine as a home occupation because you have to jump through a hoop. Are other people saying they want to get rid of it for LDR?
Yes, that so far Terry and Bill Spence have said not allow it in LDR. But you're saying you like it the way it's written? I don't know if you're muted again, Nance.
I'm just muttering to myself as I think through getting rid of it for LDR.
You want to circle back to you?
Maybe
Yeah, circle back, because I kind of liked it before, so I'll have to think about it.
Okay, Mike Capel?
I kind of agree with Terry and Bill, even though, and I love you, Terry, they're speaking kind of for their own benefit, but I think you're right. I think the LDR should not be a place for transients.
Okay.
It's not a place where weekend people should be.
I see Lorraine had posted something in the chat. We're talking about transient, so this is less than a month. And put out for rental. I think hosting friends and family is a whole different way of looking at it.
You can always you can always bring in friends and family into your home. I don't think anybody's trying to stop that.
it was just about renting.
Right. Okay, so Mike, good. Bill Larson.
Yeah, I'm split on whether it's a good idea or not a good idea in LDR. What I find objectionable is that we would require some kind of a review to get a permit to do a home occupation. And in HDR and VC, I mean, people have rented these properties forever, and they should have a right to do so.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you specifically feel about LDR though?
Mixed on, I could go either way on the LDR. The problem is it's unenforceable. I don't think we have a problem today, and I don't think it's remotely enforceable.
Okay. John?
Well, I think I could go either way also, but some of the questions I have on these is insurance. How does the insurance companies feel about it? And also screening transients. I mean, I've heard no one even talk about that at all. And then Bill's right. How do you enforce any of this? However, for protection of the town, we need to have something in writing. So it's a tough one, I think.
I can answer the how you enforce it question. If you see someone advertising themselves like a little bed and breakfast and they're in the LDR and they get a letter. That's how you enforce it, like any other zoning rule.
Well, who sends the letter and who actually is reporting it to who?
Well, that's handled between the select board and Chris. I'm not sure who does the letters notifying of a violation. It's not a planning board issue.
And as far as the screening, I mean, that does fall to the owner, which I think is why, like with Airbnb and all of those, they have methods to give feedback, to give someone a bad rating if they are abusive anyway. So it's up to the owner to do the screening, but then that's where having some sort of a licensing for a habitually non-compliant owner could be useful in identifying problem and hopefully rectifying it for the neighbors.
My comment is because well, in the area that I live in, we've had a lot of problems here in the past. We've straightened them out by now, but for those people who say they haven't had problems, they're very lucky. We've had some serious problems here, but that's because the rental company who was renting the property out, it didn't go through the owner, it went through the rental company, didn't screen the transient. And we had some, I mean, really serious problems here.
Were those rooms in homes or were those whole homes, John?
The townhouses.
Because this is just rooms in a home. Like when I went to Newfoundland and got off the ferry, we stayed at something called a bed and breakfast. It was an elderly couple who rented out 2 bedrooms. That's what this is.
Yeah, and that's nice, but
That's all.
that's gonna be up to the homeowner if they're gonna rent it out to a lovely elderly couple or.
But that's what we're trying to decide.
But they have to be there. That's the control.
Right.
They have to be there.
Right,
Yeah, but wait a minute, wait, John, you're in HDR
yes,
and HDR, there are problems. And when I spoke to, associations across the valley, contrary to what one person said yesterday, there are problems across the valley in HDR. But we know that's gonna be because of the nature of the beast. And the associations have to do something about it individually, the same as High Country did.
yep.
But I think again, we are jumping ahead.
But LDR, I think we should decide whether or not to take this out of LDR, which I think we should.
Okay. So again, this is focusing on owner occupied residents with 1 or 2 bedrooms rented out. So John, in LDR. And
LDR.
so John,
Understood, yeah, yep.
so your thoughts for LDR?
I'm split. I'm like Bill Larson. I could probably go either way.
Rich left. Bill Spence, we already heard from.
Nope, I'm here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought
I'm
you.
doing double duty.
Oh, awesome. Okay, Rich?
I'd like to remind everyone that right now, we don't enforce anything, even though it's illegal to do what people are doing. So the argument that this is unenforceable makes little sense to the way I look at it. We also no screening goes on now at all. Insurance, nobody looks at any of that. It's just happening. And what we're trying to do is to put some bounds on this. I think it's fine as a home occupation in an owner occupied residence. I think it's much less likely that you can have problems with people if there's an owner in the home while it's being rented on a short-term basis. And one other comment with regard to enforcement. I see enforcement here just like I see enforcement in our lighting ordinance. We can enforce it if we choose to do so.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
One thought of kind of having as you're going along is, so a couple of communities have used the term hosted to clarify something different than owner occupied, that the owner actually has to be there. Because, right, if we use the term owner occupied, well, maybe that's not clear that they actually have to be there, right? Because we think owner occupied versus renter occupied. If we change it to something like, if we add a new term, hosted, that would be clear that they actually have to be there.
Right, and hosting implies that there would be interactions. The owner isn't just hiding in the attic while that house is.
We can make a definition that says whatever you want, but it may be better to use a different term than occupying.
Okay.
Thinking as we go along.
Sure. Why don't we circle back to Nancy?
Yeah, thinking about this more, I am more convinced that we should leave this. I like the idea of having it say owner hosted, because I really don't think you're going to get the situation where somebody who's renting one double bed in a house occupied and hosted by the owners is going to bring back 50 people to party in that house. It's just not going to happen. So I just don't see the issues that would perhaps come up if this were the entire dwelling.
Problem is that homeowner occupation doesn't change the nature of transiency. It's here today, gone tomorrow. And you're exposed to a much greater variety over a period of time of renters. And so you're going to get a very varied type of personal renter in a transit situation. So I just think you're leaving the door wide open to more problems if you allow that in LDR. It's just not the right place for it.
Well, my thoughts are that with an owner occupied, because it seems to me the biggest issues that we heard last night and we've been hearing through is, inappropriate trash removal, too many cars parked, leading to too much traffic. And I feel like in an owner occupied, owner hosted, that those issues should be mitigated. So I feel like it's okay for, a home occupation where they would go through getting some sort of a permitting process so that it would be reviewed. So I feel like it'd be okay.
The neighbors of the person who's renting out their place might have different ideas as to what's acceptable and what's not.
And through the home occupation process, that's where you can talk about parking and trash.
And how does that really differ from someone who has a large family?
Right. Right.
The large family,
Noise or parking or trash issue, those are ordinances that have nothing to do with, well, parking does with zoning, but noise, no.
what family would be as if it was the same people coming back and renting short term over and over and over again. It's a little different when they're here today, gone tomorrow. You may not ever see them again.
But the owner is there.
Perhaps. And I know what
Well,
you're
they would
saying.
have to be. They would have to be.
It would have to be.
I know what you're saying, but you leave that door open, and I know you're saying all that, but when the owner's in Europe and there's a little bit of a problem.
No, that's not what we're talking about here. This is the owner would have to host in this particular line that we're talking about now. It's with the owner there hosting.
I think you're assuming there's gonna be a lot more control than there will be.
But right now, there's no control. We would have to enforce.
Right now, it's not allowed.
Right, and we're not enforcing it, so there's no.
No, but you have the ability to enforce it. If there's a problem, you have a law that says this is against the law. When you make it a legal operation, no longer does that work.
All right, well, just in the spirit of continuing on with our little poll here, there are 3 who are against LDR usage of the 1 or 2 rooms in an owner hosted, and 1, 2, 3 who feel like it's okay the way it's written, and 2 who could go either way. So unless of those who feel like it could go either way have a strong change in how they feel after this discussion, that was Bill Larson or John.
I've listened to all the arguments, and I'm leaning towards allowing in an owner-occupied residence that the transient guests.
Okay. John, has anything swayed you?
No, I probably would say yes, allowing it.
Okay. So just for the sake of, and I'm not trying to steamroll anything, but just to try to keep things moving, and we can come back and revisit at the end. I would say at this point, the majority is leaning towards line number 2, the yellow, as written. And let's move on to the bed and breakfast.
And the amount of debate on that tells me that one should be a separate amendment.
Yes, the LDR.
Might be equally mixed thoughts in the community.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I feel like the
I would
LDR.
agree with that.
What's that?
I would agree with Tara's statement that it ought to be a separate amendment. I think that is the pivotal one.
So separate it, so it's gonna be two separate amendments, the LDR and the other district? Is that what you're thinking? Rich is nodding, yep.
Yeah, I would.
Okay. All right, so how are we feeling about bed and breakfasts? We have that as not allowed in LDR, special exception HDR, allowed in BC.
And it's technically already allowed in BC because large, so
Yes,
the only really thing is whether it should be a special exception in the HDR.
true. No, Craig had made that comment earlier today, which is a valid point. Most of the larger homes are in LDR. I don't know if that affected anyone's thinking, but for now, let's start with a special exception in HDR. How are people feeling about that? And let's just go through. Nancy?
I think this row as it's constituted is fine. I think maybe we can revisit this, next year, and if there's people clamoring in LDR to have a bed and breakfast, maybe we can think about special exceptions. But at this point, I don't really see the need.
Okay. Mike?
I happen to like it the way it is.
Okay. Phil Larson?
Okay, the way it's written. I think we lose sight of the fact that we approved one of these things years ago.
Yeah, the mark is a little bit less. It's because we have a very large group of.
Wendy, I would say yes. I like it the way it's written. John?
Yes, I'm fine with it the way it's written.
Man, we're on a roll, guys. Rich?
I'm fine with it, although I think I agree with Nancy. We may have to relook at this. I think Craig made a valid point yesterday about where else would you have bed and breakfast other than in an LDR, given the nature of the building. But I like it the way it is now.
Bill Spence?
Yes, the way it is perfectly okay. We're getting some feedback. Do you hear it?
That's Rich.
Other conversations going on.
Yeah, it's Rich doing this select board meeting as well.
Oh, I see. Okay.
He's double meeting. Terry?
I'm all set with the way it is.
Wow, all right. Success. Look at that. So now entire dwelling units. So, short-term rental, any dwelling unit, no more than 90 cumulative calendar year days. Nancy? Are you still muted, Nancy?
Yeah, sorry, I was. I guess I would tend to think that this is fine as written. That's my sense.
Okay. Mike? Mike Capel? You have thoughts on this line?
Yeah, no, I had unmute myself.
Okay.
I'm also double booking, if you will. I happen to like the way it's written. I think you have to bold based upon the misinterpretation. We don't have to bold it, but people have to understand the two things, the concept of offered and the concept of cumulative, which I think are very, very important. And I think make this thing work.
Okay. So you feel like it's fine in LDR?
I think it's fine the way it is.
Okay. Bill Larson?
I'm okay with the concept. I'm not okay with at all the description of the 90 days cumulative and offered. I don't think anybody will ever understand that. And I think we ought to come up with another way. I understand the problem, but we ought to come up with another descriptor.
Okay. John?
Yeah, I'm okay with the way it is, but Tara, quick question for you is, again, I have to ask about screening and insurance. Do you have any comments on that?
That would be up to the homeowner.
Okay,
That's not something the town can ever be involved in.
okay. So just forget about my thought.
We'll talk to forget about it, but we're sorry we can't help you.
Okay, thank you.
Rich?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Bill Larson. I'm a little troubled over the 90 days, but I'm giving the comments yesterday. But I'm certainly willing to move forward with it as it is. Again, thinking that maybe we may have to modify this at some point in the future, the number of days as we get some experience with this.
Okay. Terry?
This is worse than the one above. This is not even owner occupied. It's a larger area to be turned over to transients who will be here today, gone tomorrow. I don't like it. I don't think it has any place in LDR. HDR, VC, C1, that's up to, I guess I'm not as hard against those, but boy, this has no place in LDR.
Yeah. Yeah, after hearing the discussion last night, brace yourself, Terry, I agree with you.
Best to have a friend.
I definitely heard people's concern because 90 days, you know, it is every weekend and holiday weeks. And I could see how that could be disquieting to someone who's in a residential area neighborhood. I feel like if the owner's there, there's some control. But with no owner there, I'd be concerned.
So this is not dealing with just the issue of I want to rent my apartment, I want to rent my house for 6 months in the off season that I'm not here.
That's okay. That's long term.
Yeah.
You don't need any special permission for that.
We're talking about transients.
You don't regulate whether somebody is in a home because they're owning it or renting it, but you regulate business use of a home, and that's where you're trying to decide where that line is.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bill Spence. It looks like I was so anxious to get to hearing from Terry, I didn't get right over you.
All right. My argument is that if we strongly debate 1 or 2 rooms in a house where the owner is there, then in my opinion, this is definitely the category of not allowed in LDR. This is the one kind of the box where the most risk occurs. So I'm not in favor of this in LDR, HDR, VCC1. I think it's permissible. Now, I have another problem, and that is after listening to people argue about the 90 days cumulative calendar year and about the problems with enforcement, who would ever know? Those arguments I think are valid, and whether 90 days it was argued last night as being an arbitrary number.
But if you guys get rid of this in LDR, you can get rid of the whole row, and you don't need to talk about 90 days anywhere because you're going to be allowing unlimited in the other districts. The 90 days was only to draw a line between what was accessory use and so was allowed in the LDR and what wasn't accessory and needed a permit in the rest of town. So you'd get rid of that and requiring a permit, it's a new defined use that's allowed, that's clear that's allowed, and it needs site plan review because it's business use. So we don't need to talk about 90 days if you guys get rid of that in the LDR.
Okay.
That's true. Now, for everyone who liked it the way it was written, what would you think of that type of a change?
I don't like it at all. I mean, what this is taking away, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, is, okay, say, what about does this include like house trading, where like you want to go for Christmas and, some other city and you trade houses with somebody, there's websites for that for a couple of weeks, or you go to one of these websites where, you know, it's kind of a barter system. So you might get a trade plus some pay for the 2 weeks, whereas you're spending, you know, because you're going to a less expensive place for your 2 weeks. Does this take away someone's right to do that?
Well, it's up to you guys how you define short-term rental. The draft I thrown out has the words that is offered for transient rental. I'm not sure that trading like that is rental.
That's a good point. I mean, or, yeah, because you could have a house sitter in while you're away, and that wouldn't be considered a rental. So is trading, yeah.
We use words like offered for rent in increments of less than a month. That's what makes it a transient rental. So to me, the house trading would not be.
Yeah, I guess I'm also thinking about friends who had a lovely large house that they built here in the valley and would rent it out for a couple weeks over Christmas to make, you know, money to run the house the rest of the time. And that this would take away their right to do that, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. What if we were to look at way less than 90 days, say 30 days cumulative in LDR to help address some of these? I can't tell if everyone's frozen or.
I'm thinking about it. I think
Yeah.
maybe that's a good compromise.
30 days now makes it more restrictive, not less restrictive.
Only in LDR.
No, I understand that.
I don't think it solves the real problem, no.
Okay.
Well, Terry has a different real problem than I do. Terry's real problem is he wants freedom from annoying, you know, badly behaved guests that are there without any supervision. And I worry about the homeowners' freedom to use their property as they would like to. So we're looking at two different problems, and I'm trying to figure out if there's a reasonable compromise move.
Yeah.
You just summed up the whole issue around short-term
It is.
rental.
That's the core issue.
Yeah. Yeah, and it might be the type of thing that we have to just put to a vote for the town.
Yeah, if I can comment, again, this is going on and it's prohibited. And what we're trying to do is try to get a handle on it. By taking this out completely, you open the town up to having to, well, they would have to, you know, it should anyway, but it'll be enforcing the rental of property in LDR, whole houses. And we're a resort community. I think people come to a resort community. I think people who live here also expect that they have the opportunity to rent their property for a certain amount of time. So what we're looking to do is either stay the way we are, which is Terry's position, but we're not enforcing it, or find a way to get our arms around what's really going on anyway and put some bounds on it.
I'm not opposed to long-term rental. It's short-term rental, it's transients, it's Airbnb for 1 weekend.
Well,
several different
yeah.
times and several different people that I think leads to problems in an LDR.
Yeah, no, I'm torn on this a bit too, Terry, but.
You know, Rich, there's another problem.
I can just make this one comment. We have a shortage here in lodging, and this will exacerbate it, I think.
No, not in you don't have enough in LDR to really have much to do with the shortage.
The other aspect.
You got a few, but not a lot.
The other aspect is we do have a severe shortage of long-term lodging available to folks who want to live in town or want to spend 6 to 8 months. And there's very little of that available because the transient can be more lucrative.
That's true.
It-
But you know, there's another problem, and while I obviously agree with Rich that it is prohibited, if you took a poll of the valley, I'm willing to bet that in excess of 75% would not be aware of that legal restriction.
Oh, absolutely. That's why we're doing it.
So what we're trying to do here is, forget for a second the specificity here, but what we're trying to do here is say, okay, there is an issue, there are issues, we can keep talking about the issues, but the first issue we must remember that we have is people don't understand the law. And a great deal of our charge is to make sure that people understand what they can and cannot do. Forget the enforcement for a second. We have to understand what they can do and try and fit it within that which is required to make our valley, our resort, the place we live, that which we want it to be. How'd I do?
Yeah.
Hey, Rich, I got a question for you. Have the selectmen debated whether, if the issue is bad behavior of short-term rental people, why don't we just fine the homeowners if they get a complaint or something?
Yeah, of course, yeah, I mean, it's a noise ordinance issue. We've not done anything beyond what we're trying to change the noise ordinance, because we don't actually have one that applies, it's just for construction.
Actually, speaking of that, Mark, hadn't you said that Chris Hodges wanted to chime in a bit with some points on this? If Mark is here.
Mark's on the select board meeting.
Okay. Can you ask him, Rich?
Well, maybe you were getting somewhere when you talked about a smaller number of days. I thought there was some merit to the argument that it would be hard to manage stuff. When I heard the comments last night, it sounded like the offer for 90 days was gonna leave the door open for more of a business than I thought you wanted as an accessory use in the LDR. And I wonder if you want to go back to talking about, like, what if it was rented for no more than 30 cumulative days? Get away from offered and have, I think if you go into a smaller number, you want to talk about rented rather than offered. And that gives the homeowner an opportunity to, I mean, I think what's one of the most common things is when people go on vacation to rent their home out to somebody else, and that again pays for the vacation.
Yeah.
Would rent it for no more than 30 cumulative calendar days would certainly make sure there aren't any people buying them for the short-term rental market. And it would put a limit on how many days the neighbors could be disrupted if there was noise or different behavior.
Yeah. And for the snowbirds, that would allow them to rent for weekends of the season, but not year-round weekends.
Yeah, so maybe that's an argument against it, but maybe that, for Terry's concerns, maybe that was just an argument against what I said.
Oh, I was trying to be supportive.
Nuisance, they'd have a nuisance next door, like 15 weekends is what, so. It's a tough issue, and your job is to find the balance, like with everything else, between the community's interests and the landowner.
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't a nuisance, it's just the additional activity that also changes the nature of a neighborhood.
Yeah, there are a lot of ways to look at that with, you know, whether we call ourselves a resort town or a town adjacent to a resort.
Offered for rent during no more than 4 weeks of the year would,
Why are you stating with offered for rent as opposed to days rented?
because I wanted to not allow what Wendy just said.
Because it's
Not
offered,
true
it may not be rented.
You could only have different people for during 4 weekends. I don't know, I'm just throwing out ideas.
Is it not true that this is more of an enforcement problem than it is in trying to define how we feel about the use of the house? That is, if there are no problems, that is, if somebody were able to screen the people who come in and out of their house without restricting or without causing neighborhood problems, you know, would it go unnoticed? Probably it would. Where we notice that there's a problem is when we have bad behavior.
The problem with leaving it to that is the fairness issue, and I think this came up last night of, you know, one person comes in and asks, can I rent out my home? I'm not clear if that's an allowed use. And you say, well, no, technically it's not. And then the neighbor's just doing it without asking.
Yeah.
Doesn't create a nuisance, stays under the radar. So ambiguity in the zoning ordinance, it creates unfairness between people. You want to be clear. Is it okay or not?
Okay. I agree with that entirely, that what we're trying to do is at least define where the board stands on behalf of the community on what is permitted and what isn't. Yep. But it's the difficulty is encroaching upon the rights of a person to do what he wants with his own property.
Right.
Yep, just like Nancy said. So in the interest of moving things forward for, which one are we on? The yellow, second yellow.
No, you're still on the green.
No.
Here. Sorry about it.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Oh gosh.
Sorry to say, but you're still in LDR of that. You're still in the first row of the first column.
Yep. Okay. So, but the majority.
Would it make sense? What if I'm just throwing out everything I can think of here. What if there wasn't? I mean, I see that the limit is going to be hard to enforce. What if it was? What if you took the limit away and it was a home occupation, and then everybody who's doing it has to come in for a permit, and then you have some permit conditions that you can enforce? But that, it doesn't address Carrie's concern for the feel of the neighborhood.
Yeah, I feel like that could be taken to a worst case scenario and voted down quickly. But besides the concern with using the term offered for, the majority of the board was in support of that line as it's written. So again, not to steamroll, but let's finish up.
In LDR too?
Yeah, we had.
And who's gonna help me reword that? That was the best I could do after reading a lot of examples, because they tend to talk about rented for 90 days. And I don't think that's what you wanted to manage. You wanted to use it to discourage buying homes for the purpose of the short-term rental market.
It would seem to me that if we're having such trouble defining the limits on this, that it's not a good place to be. And it should just be not allowed. We've really, I mean, if you really just can't even define what you're going to allow in order to take care of most of the potential problems, it becomes very convoluted. which tells me that the potential problems are kind of an issue, and they should be eliminated if they can be. And you can eliminate it by eliminating this in LDR.
I'd still like to look at the month or 30 days for LDR.
I also agree with the offered versus actually rented as something that's, I'm not sure makes sense. Because, you know, when I think about how you put up a unit for rental, I mean, in order, like you kind of put it up, like you're going to get so many fewer actually rented times unless you really only can rent it for that 2 weeks or whatever a year. If you can rent it for every weekend, at first you don't know which weekends are actually going to go, and so it's almost unfair to say you can only offer it for particular weekends in order to just reach your, and weeks to reach your 90 days. It almost doesn't make sense to say offered.
Except in the LDR, the point of this one, just to back up a little bit, the point of this one was to let somebody who has a home in the LDR offer it for the season or vacation that they're gone, not to have the home to put on the short-term rental market. It's trying to discourage that.
Short term.
So it's trying to discourage you rent it every weekend. That's not what it's for in the LDR.
It's not a seasonal rental, it's a problem. That anything over 30 days, no problem.
Yeah.
The short term. The transient.
So it's trying to create the barrier that you're describing, Nancy, versus in the other districts where you could own the home for that. It's trying to discourage, it's trying to get to that number that discourages somebody from buying a home in the LDR for the short-term rental market.
And I would also add in reaction to Terry's comment, if we're not experiencing what by putting regulation and bounds on what's already going on and not enforcing it, that is not telling people to cease and desist. How is that going to be any different than adding regulations? I mean, trying to control this process.
I think you're going to take care of 90% of it with the HDR, VC, and C1. I don't think LDR is the big issue. You might have a few, but when you're allowing long term, anything more than 30 days, you're narrowing it right down to a full house with Airbnb weekend guests.
But my point, Terry, is that that's happening now, and we haven't. It's prohibited. We're not doing anything about it.
Well, that's not a matter of the planning board. That's an issue for the.
That's my point. That's exactly my point.
Rich, I think it is different.
Okay.
You should be reluctant to enforce it when the zoning ordinance is silent on it. You're trying to make it not silent anymore, so it's black and white what's allowed and what's not.
Yeah, isn't that the purpose of this whole discussion?
Yeah.
Well, it says if it's not, I think it's kind of black and white.
There's some blurry line in between when it's still residential and when it becomes commercial. And I think you're trying to actually define that line so that you don't end up in court doing enforcement.
I don't see how it's confusing if lodging is not presently allowed in LDR. That's pretty clear.
Well, because over time, with the introduction of services like Airbnb, renting your home out when you're away becomes a typical accessory use of your residential building. That's the blurry line we're trying to get rid of. At what point, if I go away for 2 weeks and I rent my home out for those 2 weeks, that's really still an accessory use of my residence. But if I bought the home for Airbnb, now that's a business. But the line is somewhere in between there. And I think what you're trying to decide is where should the line be in the LDR and Waterville Valley?
Yeah, and I feel like the 90 days might be a bit too much for LDR, just because it is every weekend and then some. So a shorter amount of time would make it more appropriate. So I don't know if the month or the 30 days, everyone would resonate with other members of the board, or if there's,
You want to poll the board on that being 30 days in November?
yeah.
Or whether it should be, and at the same time, whether it should be offered or rented, one, which should we be using?
All right, so for terminology, we're using offered for rent or actually rented. And for LDR, would 30 days be a more sufficient number? Nancy? I can circle back to you if you want. I hate to have you always be first on the spot.
Yes, yeah, why don't you circle back? I'm thinking about it. By the way, there are 104 weekend days in a year, so it wouldn't be every weekend.
Okay.
I'm not
For the mud season weekends, they would, yeah. Mike, what are your thoughts on offered versus rented, and they're looking at 30 days for LDR transient?
Unmute Mike.
We have to remember that weekend is a funny term. There are 3-day weekends, there are 4-day weekends. And it's not just weekends we're talking about. You're talking about holiday weeks, Christmas week, God help us, Massachusetts vacation week.
Well, that's why we're throwing out right now just 30 days a year.
Right, so what are your thoughts?
But if you take holiday weekends and vacation week and Christmas week, for example, you're up over 30 days.
Right, so do you feel like there's a number that's appropriate?
So the problem that I have is that 30 days, all of a sudden, under that terminology, if you take your holiday weekend, you take your Christmas week, you take your school vacation week, you're up over 30 days.
Okay, so what are you proposing? We need 90 days?
So I mean, basically, got to remember, my background is tax, and when we talk about rental, offered is a big term in rental. I happen to like the term offered, and I think 90 days is right, because I think you're gonna get up way over 30 days when you add in holiday weekends and vacation weekends.
Okay, so specifically for LDR, dwellings in LDR.
I understand that. And I understand what Terry is saying.
Okay.
Terry, I love you, but I think there are people that are out there that want to be able to have that option. Even though, yeah, I think they're a pain in the ass. I think it is something that people bought their unit with that bought their homes with that expectation.
Okay. Bill Larson.
I don't like the term offered for more than 90 cumulative calendar days, mainly because I don't think anybody can understand that.
Okay.
So I would go to rented for more than 90 days in a year.
Okay. So you like the 90 days versus a lesser amount of days?
I'm okay with the 90 days.
Okay. John?
Sure, so I'm okay with HDR VC C1 for 90 days, LDR 30 days, and the nomenclature's definitely got to be changed.
Yeah, if you go to 30, I want you to use rented for 30.
But I'm good with the 30 for the LDR, but nomenclature's got to go.
What do you mean by nomenclature, John?
Rented.
The way it's, go ahead, Wendy.
Oh, I was gonna say, he means it should be rented, not offered for rent.
Yeah, you know, there's two different, it's split there, so you're gonna have 90 days and 30 days in the nomenclature.
No,
He wants 90 days for the other zone.
but it already is done.
No, you don't need to actually, but we get what you're saying, John.
It has to be in the nomenclature. I don't understand how you would,
Look at the red line below. It's a permitted use in HDR, VC, and C1 for any number of days. So that's not really the issue. The issue is LDR in that first line.
sorry, I might be a little on the other side, but I don't get what you're saying.
You will when we get to the red line. Right now, we're really just talking about
LDR.
And I would say, you go to 30, you want to say for rented for no more than 30 days per year.
Okay, because I don't see a red line, but okay, 30 days LDR, I'm fine with that, but the nomenclature meaning that what's written there is got to be changed.
Okay.
I think we all agree on that.
Rich?
Yeah, I'm fine with both modifications, down to 30 days and adding changing it to renting.
Bill Spence?
I think it's an improvement. But we still have so many problems, so many difficulties with this. But the answer to your question is, I think it's an improvement.
Okay. Terry?
My comments by no means mean I concede anything on this. I just want to help with the wording here. And Mike, I love you too. I love you, Mike, but I don't like the word offered. I think the word offered is not good. I think it's confusing, like Bill says, and I think that it should be the number of rented days. And again, I'm not saying I can comply with it. I go with this as far as LDR, but I don't like the word offered, and I think it would be clearer to say rented, and I think to say rented 90 days is way too many days. I think when you offer something doesn't mean you're going to get it rented, so I don't think that it equates to the same thing when you say rented. I think rented 90 means more than offered 90, so maybe
It was trying to mean something different. But
So wait, Terry, are you maybe okay with the 30 days, or are you saying it's okay
No,
for 0?
no.
we start.
We can say rented,
No.
but for 0 days.
I'm just trying to help with the language. No, LDR, no.
You can make it better without being on board with it.
Gotcha. All right, I like the 30 days. And I agree, rent. So where does that bring us? Oh, Nancy, I was circling back to you.
Okay, so I do like the idea of changing the term to rented, just because I think you're getting at the same problem, whether you say offered for rent for no more than 90 days or rented for no more than a smaller period. Because either way, I think is what we're getting to what we want, which is not rented a lot. So I guess I'd be okay with 30 days and we can give that a try for LDR.
All right. So the majority leaning towards the 30 days and with the terminology of rented, not offered for rent.
So the question is, how do we determine how many days a house has been rented? Who's going to gather all the statistics on this and point at enforcement issues?
At this point, let's just work on what we think is a good vision, and then we can figure out the enforcement working with the select board and enforcement agencies. Because I don't think it's something we can answer.
Right.
Not in our purview to answer.
I'm at the point where I'm saying it's unworkable.
Bill, I think you can ask the same question about any zoning regulation that's about what's taking place inside a building. Any use.
Okay. I'm with you there, how difficult a problem it is.
As opposed to parking spaces or lighting or whatever, anytime you regulate use, you could ask that same question. And it's like speed limits in part is dependent on the vast majority of people to follow the regulations. And yeah, it's the ones that are creating a nuisance when they're not that get caught.
Okay, so then where does that leave us with this final line then? Are we able to just?
So we have this, yes, but do you want to do that before the yellow one, or? I think, yes, this just makes the same change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I keep wanting to say that we've jumped through the yellow hoop already. We haven't. Okay, so short-term rental of 1 unit and a 2-family residential unit. 2-family residential unit offered for more than 90 cumulative days. Oh yeah, provided 1 unit is unoccupied, right? So, kind of.
So that's kind
So
of
basically, it's like an in-law apartment, just to clarify.
right, and they would go. That would go to 30. That would have the same change because it's trying to say this was an accessory use, but if you go to this other, it's a home occupation. So all of these would change, rented for what, 30 days?
For LDR.
For more than 30 days. No.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, you change them all.
So.
Because what you're saying is, well, these, to go, you looked at it the other way, these are allowed, but it has this other limit on it in LDR. Where is it set up?
Okay. So we change that to 30 days.
So if we say, all right, I can't type.
It's okay. I can't speak, so we're a good team.
Rented for no more than 30 days. Right, so then you're gonna say, like, they all have to go together.
Okay. So how are folks feeling about this line? Should I just put you to the end, Nancy?
You're talking about the red line?
The yellow line, actually.
Yellow line.
So this is like a home with an in-law apartment type of thing.
Yeah, you can put me last again.
Okay. Mike, you want to jump in?
No, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Bill Larson?
I'm okay.
John?
I guess I'm trying to figure this out. So like an in-law apartment, you could only rent it for 30 days?
No, more than.
Oh, for more than 30 days. Okay. All right. I'm good.
Okay. Rich?
I'm good.
Bill Spence?
Yes, it's an improvement.
Terry?
I would have no problem with long-term rental, short-term rental, has no place in LDR. So no, I do not agree with it in LDR.
Okay. Nancy?
Yeah, I mean, this is essentially, I mean, if I think about the houses in LDR that have, separate apartments that they rent out, I guess I don't really see any difference between that and having a bedroom you rent out. Why they get to, I guess we're saying that somehow that lets them do it more all the time. That lets them do it all the time. And in LDR, you can only rent your bedrooms out for 30 days a year.
Oh. If if you're hosting it in there's no limit on the number of days of where you can rent the bedrooms.
Say that again, Tara?
There's no limit on how many days you can rent out the bedrooms if you're there.
Oh, that's right. This is the whole unit. Sorry, you're right. I got mixed up.
But if not just, because I'm gonna lose this thought, if there's concern in LDR, I'm gonna suggest that you break this out, have a different amendment for the LDR than the rest. Like with the bedrooms, and maybe group those together. Maybe one amendment is, I'm not gonna be able to explain it well enough right now, but I'll propose a different grouping when we're ready.
Okay.
Okay, so then the logic is that because you can rent out 1 or 2 rooms in an owner-occupied residence transiently, as much as you want as a home occupation, you should be able to do the same thing with a accessory unit in a 2-family residential unit.
That's the suggestion, yes. So you're good with that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Okay, yep, and I agree with that. And I think I follow your train of thought, Tara, with separating out LDR. So I think that'll be really important so that we don't take away any potential usages for folks in HDR, just to make sure it's separated.
Yeah.
I think the whole column for LDR should be separated. That gets the right people voting in the right areas.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Okay. You went through that one fast. Excellent.
And it's not gonna be, they're not gonna vote on this table anyway. This table just tells me how to write the amendment.
True.
It'll be.
That's true, Tara, but for many people, this table is much clearer as to what we're trying to say than the actual verbiage.
I understand, but it's also helping me think about how to parse up the amendment into opportunity.
Very true, very
like
true.
Part of it and not part of it.
True.
Yeah. I think use of this table is really great for our next public hearing and really educating people. So good. So our last row, we have any other short-term rental rented for more than 30 days per year. How does everyone feel with how that's written? So it would be not allowed in LDR and would require whatever you call it, site plan or some sort of licensing for the other zones. Mike?
Are you skipping Nancy again?
I'm just gonna do it automatically, sorry.
She's clearly thinking.
I'm trying to figure out how people are going to interpret what this means. Any other short-term rental for more than 30 days a year. What does that mean with regard to the 5 categories above?
You're not. You're gonna have a definition of short-term rental that's offered for transient rental, and you have a definition for transient, and it's gonna be a permitted use in the HDR, BC, and C1 columns.
By permit.
It's a permitted use, period. We don't need to
Right.
talk about.
Wait. Tara, is it a permitted use or a permitted use?
Home occupancy or permitted.
You have to get a zoning permit for any use.
Right, so it is a permitted use, but you must go and get a permit to do it.
Correct.
Okay, that's fine.
But we don't, the only place we talk about the limit on days is when we talk about what's an accessory use. We only talk
No,
about.
no, no, I understand. And I don't have a problem with this.
So you're good with that one?
Yep.
Okay. Bill Larson?
I don't like the fact that you gotta go get site plan approval unless it is simply a letter that you have to send to someone, you know, saying I intend to rent my unit, you know, in HDR.
Okay. So more of a streamlined license process?
I don't think a heavy licensing, I mean, I can think of board meetings now, who's site plan approval, that's us. What are we gonna do?
Right. So your suggestion is instead of coming to the planning board, have it be more of like a code enforcement form that you fill out?
Yeah, that's fine.
John?
Okay, so I'm all right with it, but I'm listening to Mike, you know, what does that actually mean? I know you said it, but it still is, I think you're gonna have a lot of questions on that. What does that actually mean?
You're not gonna talk about 30 days, anything to do with this. You're gonna have a use that's short-term rental, and it's gonna be in the table of uses, like in the amendments I sent out. But you're gonna have something that says, well, if it's only 30 days, that's an accessory use of a residence and you don't need to come for a permit.
Okay. All right.
So are you good with that, how it's written?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Rich?
I'm good as written.
Bill Spence?
I think we're talking about 30 days with respect to cumulative days, are we not?
No, wait, yes. Yes.
For the year.
Okay, so put the word cumulative in, take the S off of years in the last box. And I think we're at least making some progress. But I agree with Bill Larson that we would be overwhelmed with permit problems. That there has to be an easier way to say that it's okay for you to engage in short-term rental in HDRVC and C1.
Yeah, you can choose not to require site plan review for it. The reason I actually had that in the table was there had been some concern about wanting to put some conditions on some of it so that you didn't have like 3 families crowding into a building or a condo unit.
Mm-hmm.
And that would have given you an opportunity to put some conditions on a permit that Chris can't do. And you could handle it through the minor site plan review project where they just come in with a sketch and the neighbors are notified and you do it in one meeting.
So you're saying Chris couldn't do a type of a form that people would fill out what they'd be looking to rent? Because I would think
he can't put conditions on it. Like you could put conditions on it as part of a minor site plan review of, you know, that okay, where does the trash go at this rental anyway? And there's already a parking problem, and how many bedrooms are there? Okay, we don't want to see more than 2 people per bedroom. You could do all that as part of a minor site plan review, but he really can't. It's either allowed or it's not. It's Chris's part.
Okay.
Tara, we couldn't set up a form that just said if you've got 3 bedrooms, that means you're allowed to have 6 guests. That's it.
You put it in the zoning ordinance, you can. But another way to do it would be for the select board to adopt some regulations about short-term rentals, and then there's another step people have to go through. And I'm not sure they're saving anything, but it moves that step to the select board. for Chris. But he can't just arbitrarily make up conditions to go with the zoning permit.
Laura, I have a question for you. I had a comment the other day about charging for permits and making enough money to hire an enforcement officer on this. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that most towns try to have the permit fees for everything cover the enforcement. I'm not really involved in that piece in what we're.
What do our board members think of that? Charging for a permit?
Before we jump to that, can we just finish off what we were doing with those final red line, getting everyone's feedback?
Well, it is discussing a permit, so, okay, fine. Move on.
Well, no, I want to circle back to it and see how we would do the permit, but just
Yep.
to see, we just have Terry left. You don't want to leave him out.
What about Bill? You got Bill?
That Bill
And Nancy,
Okay.
still
Good.
and just Nancy.
Thanks for including me.
At least Nancy gets a circle.
I agree with the line the way it is.
Okay, Nancy?
I'm fine with the way it is. I guess I'd love to know how many units. I didn't get to read. Did anybody else read the documentation? There was not enough time for me to read it. How many units are actually for rent in the valley? Like how much work would this be? How many people would come before us for site plan approval, do we think?
I'm not sure, because what Kathy from All Mountain Rentals had sent was, I think, just an overview of how many, the average nights per year that units are rented. I don't know that we have a number.
Yeah, so we don't really know if we'd be overwhelmed or not, because we don't really know how many there are.
She gave a high of 180 something and a low of 90 something, but that included all your black bear and golden eagle and all that stuff. So I don't think.
Right, and they wouldn't have to come to us at all.
Right.
So I'm not quite sure that it would be. I mean, I like the idea of having some code enforcement officer check these places out just for the safety of the guests. Like as a guest, I would have wanted a code enforcement officer making sure that I was safe if I were going to stay in an Airbnb. So I see this as a positive. I guess I would like to get a better handle on how much work this would be for us, or whether there's some way to create a form for the code enforcement officers to, because they can do commercial occupancy. So Tara, they can't do residential occupancy?
Oh, yeah, no, he can, this becomes a business that he can then make sure it meets the code. I was saying he can't put extra conditions on it beyond that. You don't have to require a site plan review. I just put that in because there's been some discussion. It's a business. They've got to get a permit and he's got to make sure it complies with the code. So I think, you have that safety.
And on the permit, it would say, okay, we're offering this for up to X number of people, and that could be approved or disapproved by the safety officer?
I don't know how he deals with lodging occupancy. That'll be a question for Chris.
All right, because that's, if the safety officer could do that, then it would be less critical for us to do site plan approval, I think.
And you don't have to decide that. It doesn't have to go in the zoning. You don't have to decide now whether it's going to be site plan approval.
All right, I do agree that it should be a permitted use in the 3 zones.
All right. And I agree too. So that was we're pretty much on the same page for that one. Phew.
It's
Still
good.
interested in the word cumulative. Because you could read the red box as any other short-term rental for more than 30 days per year. That's like anytime I rent my property for more than a month. I don't think that's what it means.
Okay, so more than 30 cumulative days per year?
That'd be my suggestion.
I think the cumulative is kind of interpretive there.
It's only,
Yeah, whatever. I don't have a problem putting it in.
I would have trouble trying to explain this if we were at town meeting.
it's
Well,
only,
Tara,
We're gonna
right,
have trouble trying to explain this meeting anyway.
it's only ever gonna be seen in the accessory use definition. It's- Anyway,
Tara, realistically, I know what you're saying, but when we go to town meeting, it is my expectation that in addition to having the verbiage, the detailed verbiage, I would think as a good committee and good citizens of the town, having this table, even though it is not part of the actual zoning regulations, or maybe it should be, we're gonna have to have this for people to understand this. That's just my feeling. I mean, we have it so that we can understand it. You're gonna have 70, 80, 90, 100 people, go whatever, at town meeting, maybe more. We have 400 odd residents now. We have to provide them this tabular format as well as the verbiage for them to understand that which we're promoting, in my view.
is there an issue with doing that, Tara?
no,
I mean, maybe everybody disagrees with me.
No, I think whatever makes educating people easiest is the way to go.
You know, and you know, some of us, you know, read, you know, complicated verbiage all the time. But this is so much clearer than the actual verbiage.
yeah, my point wasn't really that. My point was, there's nowhere that and this will be revised to reflect some changes you made, but we never are gonna talk about anything that's for more than 30 days per year. It's just a limitation in the accessory use that's gonna be rented for no more than 30 days per year. And I'm having trouble seeing why the word cumulative adds anything to that. This is the only place.
No, I don't think cumulative adds anything to it.
This is the only place that has any effect. We're just explaining that we just did this to, maybe a clear way to do it, but this is the only place we're gonna use that term, zoning ordinance.
I have a technical question at 11:10. Are we gonna reach the point where we can vote on this today?
No, and
Right.
like, so you guys had the door open of, you would, I think, trying to see if you could get something ready for this town meeting. And the way I think you still could would be if you were willing to meet, not next week, but the week after, like early on Christmas week, to see a revised version of everything and vote on a January public hearing for that.
All right, let me answer that question because I have to leave shortly to take my wonderful wife down to Concord. We are here. I mean, we're not going anywhere. So yeah, and even, you know, and Nancy is doing a spectacular job while she is off in California of getting up early and participating.
Right. So do you have enough, Tara, with us going through just the table to rework things? Do you want to go through the text at all?
Yeah, no, I think I do, and I wanna, the reason I don't wanna try to have you meet again next week is I have a pretty full week, and I wanna really block out a day to be able to think about how to divide this up into separate amendments. Not just make the changes, but what's gonna be logical so that you don't lose the whole thing, right? If somebody has one concern.
Tara, it also gives you time to rework everything and send it out to us so that we have at least a day or two to look at it and digest it before we have to meet again.
It depends how close to Christmas you're willing to meet, because I have a pretty full week next week already with a Thursday night hearing and some other things I need to do. So, and I work weekends, that's not a big deal, but you know, it really, again, depends how close to Christmas you're willing to have your meeting, how.
My schedule, other than next Thursday afternoon, where I have a school board meeting, other than that, I am free any and all days.
So we're looking at the week of the 21st.
Yes, I am free all that week.
All right.
And I could need, let's say, that Monday to finish. Let's say that Monday would be the latest I could get it out to you.
What if we were to look at Tuesday afternoon, the 22nd?
Are you okay, Wendy? I know that's a pretty brutal week for you.
It is. That's why I'm suggesting I'm out of work at 3 o'clock on Tuesday, the 22nd.
Okay.
That after, so Tara would have until Monday, and then we could.
That's fine with me.
And if I can get some out sooner, I will, but Monday's gonna be the first clear work day I know I can think about this.
Yeah, or
Okay.
Wednesday afternoon could work for me as well. I don't know how everyone else is looking that week.
Both days are wide open for me, except for dealing with some family stuff.
Either day, I shouldn't dominate here.
Nancy, how does that work for you?
The 21st or the 22nd
No, 22nd or 23rd?
or 23rd? It looks like I'm open.
Either day?
Yes.
Okay. Mike, heard from you. Bill Larson?
Yeah, I think the 22nd and the 23rd will work. I just want to add a comment. You know, it's highly unlikely we're going to have a regular town meeting this year. I don't know what in the world the state's going to do, but with something with the virus, but whether they're going to put them all off or who knows? But it's not, you can bet that they're not going to have a regular one.
All right. Well, at least we'll have done our part.
Zoom, Zoom can accommodate, assuming they buy the license appropriately, almost any number.
Yeah,
As can go to meeting.
Mike, the zoning amendments are by ballot.
That's interesting. I wonder how you do that. Can't you have ballots mailed to people and have them returned to town office?
I think that's probably that's my guess of what we're gonna see.
You know, when I spoke to a couple of attorneys I know, that was their guess.
I think Mark's probably up to speed on what the municipal association is saying right now.
Yeah.
I would guess that we're gonna have absentee ballots, you know, again. So you're gonna have to let people know what they're voting on months for a month in advance.
Yep, but we'll definitely have to work on the education part of it. You're absolutely right with that.
But that's not our problem.
Well, by law, zoning amendments always have to be posted and filed with the town clerk by the end of January, so the public has plenty of notice.
So realistically, our job is to get this resolved in our committee as quickly as possible so that it can move forward and we're in a position to have the final public session and get this done so we did our job.
Right, so let's get back to seeing if we can meet on the 22nd or 23rd. John, you were next. Are those days good for you?
Yes, but not an evening meeting.
Like 3:30?
An afternoon meeting's fine, no evening. I will not.
Okay. Rich? Rich, are you held up with the other meeting? Is he on there?
Vanished.
Circle
He's
back.
on there.
We'll circle back to Rich. Bill Spence?
It's, yes, 22 and 23 are probably the best days, but I'm going back and forth to Concord for the next 2 weeks. So if I'm back in time, yes, I'll be attending.
Is there one day or the other that's better for you between those two? Around 3:30ish?
The 3:30 would be an appropriate time. My guess is 23.
23 is better. Terry? Terry, are you on?
He's muted.
Wait, sorry.
Unfortunately for the rest of you, I am available on those days.
You hear Terry, it's good.
Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday all day.
Okay,
And we're having the meeting at your house.
all right. So why don't we look,
Only if we wear masks. I'm sorry, Wendy, what were the days again? I had to make a pit stop.
22nd or 23rd at about 3:30?
Yeah, either works for me.
Okay,
I'm
so,
assuming you mean December.
of course, yes, December. So why don't we look at the 23rd then?
Okay.
So it looks like, yeah, let's do the 23rd at 3:30, and then that'll give us all extra time to look through things. And we'll all be feeling festive and looking good.
Generous.
So my assignment is to make the revisions from today.
Okay, I apologize. I have to go and take this right down to Concord. Thank you, everyone. I think this was very productive.
I'm making the revisions from today. I'm parsing it up into separate amendments for you to consider. And keeping some version of the table of the second public hearing. Yes.
So is it the 23rd?
23rd, 3:30. 3:30 is good, right, Tara?
Yes.
23rd at what time?
3:30? Nice round number.
And the purpose of that meeting, just to recap,
So my understanding is I'll be on Monday, by the end of the day, providing the revisions from today,
right?
parsed up into some separate amendments for you to consider. And also some version of the table for the public, second public hearing.
Which will be on
You'll schedule that when you meet on the 23rd.
the 23rd, right? So we haven't skipped, right? Got it. So this is a special planning board meeting.
But we're getting in the rhythm of these special ones, so we gotta keep it out.
Well, there's a lot going on. A meeting once a month obviously is an issue at times.
Okay, well, that's good. So thank you, Tara, for getting all that wrangled. All right. So next on the agenda, we had gone ahead and executed Tara's contract for next year. Mark, are you on? I don't know if it's Nick, Mark, no?
Mark does not look to be on.
Okay.
Maybe you can track him down, Nick, see if he's available.
All right, be right back.
Thank you. While we hold on that, we can jump to committee reports real quick. Town core group, we really haven't had much going on. I don't know if you've walked the now lit village trail. The lighting is waiting on the collars to go around the bottom, so there's less light trespass into the adjoining buildings. Hopefully I think last I heard, if those colors are not received in time for the holidays, which they're expecting they will be, but if they're not, they'll look at moderating the lights a bit. So when those buildings are occupied, there won't be as much of a nuisance. But I do encourage everyone to get out there on it. It's kind of fun, especially now with the snow, to have a little evening walking path. Anything from the Conservation Commission?
Let's see, am I on? I'm on. So we're meeting Monday, the 14th. There's not much more than that, but I do have a quick question to the board members. The commission recommended 25-foot setback on wetlands, and I want to know what the board thought of that, and if it is something that we all agree on, where does that go? How does that enforce and how is that put in place?
I was thinking about that this morning, actually, reviewing the minutes. Is that something we should add on for our January meeting so we all can take the time to look through?
Yes. Yeah, that'd be good.
To add that to our agenda for January?
That would be great if you could, yeah.
I'm not sure that there would be time to write an amendment for this coming town meeting at this point, because it would need, but it might need some definitions and so forth.
That's true.
So is that something the town would vote on, the town citizens?
Yeah, that would need to be a zoning amendment, John.
Okay. How can we,
This seems
I
late.
mean, we've been after this for months, maybe even a couple of years now. So what's going on? How can we keep skirting this?
I'm sure it's nothing intentional. Why don't we, well,
I can see, because we're so busy with so many other things, it does get missed, but I mean, I'm speaking for the commission, so we've gotta get them in there somewhere.
yeah, I agree. What do you propose, John? What do you think would be the best way forward?
If the town's gonna vote on it, we need to get it in there.
Is it possible this December 23rd meeting, would that give us time, Tara, if we discussed it then?
I don't have time to write it for you before.
Okay.
Think about it, research what you have, no.
So does that mean we'd go another year before town meeting? That's crazy.
When would we need to get the language in by? Sorry, Tara, can you remind me of that?
The date is somewhere near the end of January.
So if we were to, so we would need to have a public hearing on it.
Right. See, it's usually not as simple as a setback, John. It's really regulating the land use in that buffer area. And I've written some model language on that with the state and attorneys and whatnot and DES. And we're advised not just to have a setback, but to talk about what can be done in that zone as well. And I'm happy to share some models with you, but not just the setback. Not that.
Can that be a project for Tara next year? I know it doesn't satisfy you, John, but it sounds more complicated.
I mean, yeah, we just can't keep putting the commission on the back burner. So we have to do something. So if we at least start something, I mean, our hands are tied. I understand, but we can't let this go.
Say again more specifically. Can you say again specifically? Because I was updating my calendar. What the specific setback you're talking about?
I can only speak for a 25-foot setback on the wetlands area. And that's where we would need your help on that.
And you don't regulate wetlands at all yet?
No, I don't believe we do.
So what you're really talking about is a wetland overlay. And that's not as easy as just putting in sentence that says that.
Okay. That's right, we need your help, right?
You try to think about it that way. I'll take a look and see if you could try to get away with that, and I can do before the December meeting, but.
Yeah, I mean, because the only problem is there's like no land left to be building on, and by the time we get this in place, it's totally useless. So I'm confused. I'm very confused on why we even have well, my personal opinion, so. That's all. We're just looking for a 25-foot setback, and we're looking for your guidance and anything you can do to go forward with it.
For just structures.
For building, yes.
Yeah, well, let me look at that. Maybe you can, I'll see if there's something simple you can get away with that can be done more quickly.
All right. Anything you do, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Don, you're talking about the study that was done by the consultant that identified the wetlands?
Well, yeah. Rick Vanderpool come up with a lot of the problems in this valley, and there's a lot more to it than anyone knows. And that's a whole nother issue to get Rick back in to talk to people, but everyone seems to be skirting this whole issue. So we're in a huge floodplain here. So that's my thoughts.
John, though, what Bill was just asking about was the wetlands were not identified by Rick Vanderpool. There was a wetland study that was done in the town that identified specific wetlands, not the general drainage of the town. And
yeah,
so,
I know, but Rick, I agree with you, but Rick, I think he was way more specific than the.
Oh, no, he was way more general than the actual wetland study that we had. The wetland study that we had is an entire volume with multiple maps and an entire a look at the entire town. I mean, what Rick did was the natural resource inventory was in addition to, but the actual wetland study that Bill is talking about was very specific in identifying the wetlands. And the
but they
question
didn't
would
have
also,
a setback, did they?
no, they didn't. No, we did not. We decided,
but the town agreed to them, right?
These
were the wetlands that we were going to use going forward as wetlands.
Did you ever find that digitally, Mark? I remember asking for it, but I don't remember if I got it.
yes, we do. I think we have it on CD actually, Tara. So we'll have to get you those files. But yes, Bill, we did adopt that wetlands study. Those are the identified wetlands here in town, what she did. Okay. What Rick did was.
Because I don't want to go back into the debating again what's a wetland and what's not a wetland.
No, the reason I asked to see it is if you adopt a 25-foot setback from wetlands, you're gonna need to put a wetlands definition in the zoning ordinance, and you'd want to cite that study. You'd want to incorporate that study by reference, and then those are still your wetlands.
Yes, and so the natural resource inventory that Rick Vanderpool did was separate and different than the actual He did not identify wetlands the way that she did. Okay, so I want to make sure we're not using two different documents when we're doing this.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll get that for you, Tara.
Great. So I just wanted to circle back for Tara's contract review. Mark, I was wondering if you had that, if you wanted to help review that and where we're at with the select board.
Well, the selectmen have put the funds in the proposed budget right now as of a couple of days ago. So, and in fact, just a few minutes ago, they finished the first review of the budget. So the proposal that was to you has been included for funding in the 21 budget.
Okay, so that includes, sorry, do we have
The
oh,
number,
wait,
the
share
number that I
with the
put,
board?
the number that I put in was 13,000.
Right,
Okay, so the planning and zoning line is funded right now at 13,000. If it needs to be a different number than that, just tell me, and Rich. Because is that the correct number? Is that what you were expecting? Does that take care of
believe
everything?
so, because sorry, I did not print out the previous.
I'm sorry, I'm not sitting at my desk, so.
I didn't put a dollar amount in the contract. I set it up the same way we did this year, that it just covers possible tasks and, on an as-needed basis, and we talk about what you want and what the scope and budget is as we go.
Okay,
Right.
well,
And we did this year, so that's how I set up next year's contract too.
yeah,
Right,
so,
but it's with the master plan, project, we had a more ballpark estimate in there.
I thought it was like $8,000 and then 5,000 for the general.
Right.
So the
Yeah,
total
it's a
was,
combination. It's not just Tara. It's our budget to include hiring Tara if we choose to do so
for the master plan review.
for the master plan review.
Right,
Yes,
so-
that's
so
our
the-
budget basically.
The total annual number for the planning and zoning line item is right now 13,000. And I think the plan was 8,000 for the master plan review and 5,000 for general services. If it needs to be something different than that, then just let me know.
Something more, not something less.
Of course.
Well, or whatever you need it to be.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think that should be sufficient. Thank you, Mark. I was coming up with jumbles for numbers. All right. Anything in communications?
Nope.
I just need the board to authorize you to sign my blanket agreement for next year.
Oh. Let's vote.
If you want to keep me, but
Or,
I haven't affected anybody too much.
so I would,
Let's have another 2-hour discussion on this.
no. All right, so entertain a motion. Tara's services.
I'll second that.
We need a
Wait,
first.
you didn't make the motion first.
You need a first, Nancy, you got
Okay,
a first.
make the motion
Oh,
now.
sorry about that. All right, I'll make the motion. I make a motion to accept, although we haven't seen it, have we? But Wendy, you have it? The
contract, yes.
The contract from Tara Bamford to the Waterville Valley Planning Board as stated.
You need a seconder? Second motion.
All righty, all those in favor, Nancy,
Yes.
Bill Larson.
Yep.
Wendy, yes. John,
John Racine, yes.
Rich,
Absolutely, yes.
Bill Spence,
Positively, yes.
Harry?
Yes.
All right. Excellent, and that passes. Thank you, Tara. We do appreciate all that you're doing to help us.
Poor woman.
Thank you.
So, quick calendar review then. We are set for meeting on December 23rd at 3:30 to review where we're at with the transient lodging. And hopefully look to put forward language for public hearing. That date we'll decide on the 23rd. Otherwise, our regular meeting in January will be on the 14th.
pencil in, I think you could pencil in the regular,
The public hearing on the 13th.
yeah. We don't have to do the newspaper anymore, so we'd be able to make that from the 23rd.
So
Sure.
6 PM on the 13th?
Unless everything falls apart on the 23rd and the board gives up and doesn't want to send any of it to town meeting, I think you could go ahead and plan on that.
Sounds like a plan.
Waiting for Terry to unleash his nuclear bomb on us that'll destroy all this. But other than that, I think we're moving.
I'm working on it.
Is there anything else from the board? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to adjourn this meeting. This is Rich.
I'll second that.
Alrighty, all those in favor, Nancy,
Yes.
Bill Larson,
Yes.
Wendy, yes, John,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes,
Bill Spence,
you're muted, Bill.
don't leave us in suspense, Bill.
Raise your hand.
Yeah, you, you know I'd be in favor of that, right?
Terry,
Yes.
alrighty, thank you so much for all of your time, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Wendy.
Rich, can you
Yeah.
hold on?
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the day, Nancy.
Thank you, Karen.
Rich.
Thanks, Rich.
Rich, please hold on.
Sure.
Thank you.
Alright, thanks, Tara.
Rich, I need to just quickly